400 cases of people who wandered into the wilderness but never came back. Accounts of children, people
was a coyote,
vanishing,
dog, or
seemingly
else.
swallowed up by the many endless forests across America, or even later found in ways that defy logic.
An animal.
Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my central light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man.
She described the way that
like a
the
man. I don't
creature
know what it
moved
was.
would not be
Okay. You've
unnatural.
had problems in the neighborhood
It looked
before?
like it was
Yeah, my dog was
uncomfortable
killed here
in
just
its own
recently.
feet.
I don't know what it was. So whatever it was that was standing out there. I'm out here looking through the window now and I don't see anything.
She
I don't want to go
believed
outside.
that what she was looking at
Jesus
was
Christ,
pure
you better...
evil.
Sure.
Tia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9".
Do you see
The
him now,
cases of
sir?
about
Yes, I'm looking
100
right
people,
at him.
at least, who claim that they've been abducted
hang
by
on.
aliens.
He's
One
right.
of Dr.
Is
Matt's
he in your
patients,
yard,
Linda,
sir?
Yeah,
who
he's
says
gone.
she
He's
has been
big.
Faded out.
like since childhood.
Reality. I was just
what I remember
being brought up this tunnel of light, right?
being around my
Out
bed.
of this tunnel light,
I
just
ran between
like
them
noticed
and ran
parts
out
of
of
my
the
life
room
that
to
wouldn't
my
even
mother's
occur to me to remember.
hide
Then I
from
knew that I
And
wasn't
I
in
never
my
told
body,
anybody
that I
about
was
that, and I just buried it in the back
And so
of my
then I
mind.
came to the end of this tunnel and noticed there was a man that first starts me at first as
A
a poison.
mist or a
And
fog
I
kind
saw
of
him
moving.
to the
The
dawn.
action, the
That-
motion caught my
Then
eye. It
the
actually
wizard,
started
without
taking
moving his
shape,
mouth,
taking
spoke to me
form.
and said,
The
"Struggle,
idea
you're
of the
too
Grim
young to
Reaper
die."
went through my head, cloaked figure. And as I was watching, it kept becoming more and more and more distinct to me that this was actually something with some type of presence. Like it knew I was there. And as I was watching it, it turned and looked directly at me. I felt like whatever this was angry at me. I wasn't welcome. It wanted me out. I had been face to face with a ghost or a demon, a spirit. I'm not really sure what. But this feeling of terror actually was going through me. And I really felt more that it was demonic. It was something very evil.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Real Supernatural Encounters. For my guest today, I have Robert. He's been on the Dogman Cams show and channel, and he is going to be telling his story today as well of him and his family raising a dogman. So before we get to his story, Robert, could you give a brief bio about yourself?
I am 58 years old. I'm a father, grandfather, great-grandfather. And ever since May the 5th, I'm a great-great-grandfather. Makes me feel real old.
All right. Well, Robert, I guess if you're ready, go ahead and start with your story.
My story started in 1985. My dad was still in the Army Reserves.
Okay.
Him and his best friend, I'm not going to give their names. His best friend was his commanding officer. And since my hunting dogs got killed, all 10 of them, I was kind of like into a real bad depression. And they came home. They said, we're going to give Robert a surprise. I didn't know what this was. Little burlap in a burlap sack. It was kind of small. And now they brought out this very, very, very sick pup. Me and my girlfriend was looking at this pup and I was holding him. This pup looked strange. Back legs and everything looked natural. I said until I started examining his front, and I found out those were not front legs at all. Those were very, very long arms and raccoon type like hands. And I got looking at his hands and at the knuckles and all that. I found the knuckles were a little bit large. Then when the little sick guy flexed his fingers, claws would come out like a cat. And I'm like, oh boy, that's cool. But the little guy was real sick. And I think when they brought Rascal home to me, they thought he was going to die. But me and my girlfriend, we started giving him formula that was loaded up with antibiotics. And as soon as we got him to take that, like on the 4th or 5th day we had him, he started drinking water and everything else. He started eating a little bit of solid food. Of course, we meshed up like kind of like baby food and all that. And he responded to that real well. Then about the end of the 2nd week, his eyes came open and they were cobalt blue. He looked up at us and the whole family was just looking at him and stuff. And he reached out his arms and stuff to me because I was holding him, like to hug me. So I hugged him and I was petting him and everything else because he was very young at the time. His skin was charcoal gray. Now his mane, all the way down to his tail, was black. And his mane went all the way down, kind of like a lion's mane and stuff, went all the way across the shoulders, down to his chest, to where when he started getting older, he started growing his beard out. And I found out from his teeth, he had a double row of teeth on the top and the bottom. And they were kind of like canine, except for the 2nd row of teeth. They were like a little bit more refined and smooth. And as he started growing, we had him in the house with us. He would go over there and he would go over to each of our member of our my family. They would hold him, hug him, pet him and all that. And about the 3rd week, 3rd or 4th week, actually, he started walking. And he couldn't walk very far on bipedal yet. So, and for a regular dog, man, my grandfather always told me it usually takes him 6 months to a year to walk bipedal. But with the antibiotics we were giving Rascal and stuff, and as strong as he was getting, he was able to do it a whole lot quicker. And of course, my girlfriend, Amber, that's what I'm calling her because I'm not going to give out a real name. She would give him shots and stuff where he would get stronger and everything else. Now, my girlfriend, when I met her in college, she already had a little girl, artistic girl, from another guy, which he died in a car accident. So my family consisted of me, my dad, my grandfather, his girlfriend, Rosie, which she had long blonde hair, and her teenage daughter, which I considered my sister, Teresa, who had red hair. And of course, my girlfriend, Amber, and Teresa worked at the veterinarian clinic. So they kind of made sure Rascal had his shots and everything. So Rascal started growing, and right at 6 months, I started giving him what we would call strength training and speed training, because we found out he could climb excellently, and he could also swim real good. Actually, he could swim underwater, which amazed me, like a person. And I also found out by 6 months, he could understand our speech. Like he could understand English language, like me and you talking right now. And my grandfather was noticing this because he was watching Rascal's eyes. And Rascal had cat-like eyes, and they were golden when it was getting older, they changed over to golden yellow, a real nice golden yellow color. And we were all sitting at the table at the time, and my grandfather says, he's listening to us and he understands our speech. And I said, I looked over at Rascal. I said, come here, boy. He walks over to me. I said, okay, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to answer it or point. I told him, I said, okay, Rascal, since you've been listening to all of us, where's Rosie and Teresa? He looks over at me and he looks over at Teresa and Rosie, and he points like with his hand, like you and I point. I said, okay, those two, their jaws dropped. I said, Rascal, where's Dad? And Dad was sitting directly across the table from him, and he points at Dad. I kind of shook my head and I said, okay, Rascal, where's Grandpa? Grandpa is at the end of the table. He looks over at Grandpa and he points. I said, Rascal, okay, where's my girlfriend? She was at the other end of the table, and he points at her. And I'm like, okay, boy, you can't understand our speech. So, and after that, we started feeding him. I started, cooking vegetables and giving him raw vegetables. His favorite was broccoli and potatoes and carrots and corn. Now, meat, I cooked the meat. When I cooked the meat, you get more vitamins and stuff out of that. And he took to the cooked meat way better. I was shocked at this, way better than he did with the raw meat. So I'm saying, okay, we're staying with the cooked meat. Because this kind of proved to me, dogmen are more than just meat eaters. They're omnivores, which means they eat vegetables as well as meat. And another thing about Rascal, I found out a little bit later about his first year that he was telepathic. And I found out about this when he was sleeping with me, and he always slept with me. And it was like through this dream state, kind of like when me and him could communicating. And I asked him a few questions. Did he know who he was? And he said, yes. I said, okay, you know who we are? And he said, yes, you are my family. That I'm sorry.
You're fine, buddy. Take your time.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine, buddy. I can edit all this out, so you don't have to worry.
Oh, it's okay. It's like, that memory come up is actually a happy memory. So after that, see, and his thing with me, he always hung out with me, but his interactions with the rest of the family was always different. My grandfather, he would always sit out there, after dinner and everything. He would sit out there on the front porch with his pipe, smoking his pipe, and Rascal would be there, and he would lay down right beside Grandpa. And my grandpa, he would have this thing of baking powder and a toothbrush. Rascal would open up his mouth, and Grandpa would always brush his teeth. This was kind of funny. I said, okay. But during the daytime, when I was sleeping, because I was working nights at the time, working nights and days at my job, when Rascal would be with my dad, he'd be outside backyard, working and stuff and all that, pulling brush off to the burning pile, and Rascal would walk with him. He'd be dragging that brush with him. And when it comes to the girls, they would be either in the cleaning the house or cooking. When they was cooking, Rascal would always lay there in front of the open way to the hallway to the kitchen. He would lay there right across the hallway, made sure no one bothered him while they were cooking. And with Treese and Rosie, they would lay there. They would sometimes sit on the couch. Rascal would lay across both of them. And of course, they would groom his fur and everything else. Because Rascal, when he finally got all his fur in, he was completely black. And since he was a type 2 dog man, he grew up to be about 9.5 foot tall, well over 625 pounds. That was an extremely big boy. And he would stay in the house with us. When we would go to sleep at night, Rascal would always check the doors and everything, make sure they were locked, because I showed him how to lock them. He would check all the doors, check all the windows, then he would go through all the bedrooms, making sure everybody was in bed and quiet before he got in bed with me. And when he'd get in bed with me, I always had a king-size bed. He would lay up against me, put both his arms around me, and drape his huge head over my neck and shoulders. We'd be both asleep, because I'd turn around facing him and I'd usually bury my head in his mane, and I'd be asleep. And he always made sure that nobody was sleeping close to the windows. And the reason for that was, before Dad brought Rascal home, like I said, we were always having problems with these damn type 4 Bigfoot, because they would stand there in front of our windows at night, especially mine, because even as a kid, the damn things would scare the shit out of me. But when Rascal came on the scene, for some strange reason, them things didn't come up to the house anymore. Because on the first incident, when Rascal came into my bedroom one time, he went into a defense crouch and he started growling so loud that it shook the house. Everybody came running. Of course, Dad and Grandpa came running, and they couldn't see anything in the window, but we could see shadows moving. And he was growling and growling. And my dad said, "Boy, back up." He backed up. My dad had his 357. He didn't see anything, but he looked down on the ground. He says, "Something's been here." And he said, whatever it was, Rascal scared it off. And we're going like, okay. And this is about his year. This is back in 1986. This is when he was only half grown. He became fully grown in 1987. That's when we started his training. First, we started out with speed training. I did that because he liked to, when I went down the road, because we lived on a 400 to 500 acre homestead. that stretched all the way to the LBL, if you know what the LBL is.
Yeah.
And so on this road with the stop sign, I started basically racing him, and he was running real good on two legs. He got up to 60 miles an hour. We kept on and kept on for several weeks. Then I had him to run beside me on four legs, and he got so fast I could see the trail where he ran, but I couldn't see him. He was that fast. And then when I got up to the stop sign, he would jump in the back of the truck. I'd have that back window open for him. He'd slide through the back window of my truck, and he would wind up in the front seat with me, and we would go back. So I knew his as far as speed, his speed was already completed. Then we went to strength training. This went with I had him climbing trees up to 60 to 80 foot as fast as he could and back down, because I wanted him, when he was doing the climbing and then swimming, it was building his muscles up. And it got to a point, he had gotten so strong, we couldn't measure his strength at all. And here's what my grandfather did for Rascal when he was down at the shop. He made these aluminum razors to fit over his retractable claws. His retractable claws were 4-inch. And when he fitted those metal razors over his claws, and these metal razors, when he retracted his claws, his metal razors retracted with his claws, which gave him, instead of a 4-inch slash or cut reach, it gave him a 10-inch. When these razors would retract with his claws, it would form over his knuckles like a bladed brass knuckles, which gave him a punch power like I couldn't imagine. And as for camping and hunting buddy, Rascal was, I'm going to say he was the ultimate. I'm going to say this, you've never had a camping experience or hunting experience until you have hunted with a dog man, especially like Rascal. And always when I went camping, I do my camping thing, because since we had a huge fireplace and stuff, I'd always cut the wood and cut down a tree, cut the wood, and Rascal be on top of the hill, because I'd be kind of like in the valley. In the valley, there was a huge creek that runs all the way to the Cumberland River. And we had at Huge Creek connected up to 2 huge ponds full of fish and everything. And that's where I'd set up my camp, in between these 2 ponds. But it would be kind of like away from the woods, because, you know, I didn't want anything to sneak up on us. And when I made our camp, I made 3 separate campfires. 1 campfire on each side of the tent, and then 1 in front of the tent, because I had the truck parked directly in back of the tent. And this is about a 5-6 person tent. And Rascal be in there in the tent with me, sleeping. He would like be guarding on top of the hill, like I said, when I'd be cutting down a tree, then cutting up, splitting up wood, putting it in the back of the truck. And then I would knock off just before dusk after gathering up all the wood and stuff. And I would go down to the creek, and me and Rascal both would jump in that and cool off. Then we dry off, then we sleep in a tent before leaving in the morning. And then when it comes to hunting, deer hunting, now that was an experience that I loved. And I will say this, don't deer hunt at night. Even when I was with Rascal, you know, even though I was a little bit braver with Rascal, and I always had my Mini 14 and my AK-47 with me. And he kind of like, when he saw when I was getting those guns out and cleaning them and stuff, his tail would wag and he would perk up immediately. He enjoyed that. And of course, he would pack, my grandfather made a pouch for him, shoulder pouch, for extra ammo, extra food for both of us, and other side of the pouch where I could put my other rifle. And we would take off in the truck and everything. We'd go hunting. It'd be about a 2 or 3 weekend hunt. We'd always come back with about 3 or 4 deer, which is real good because we would be up in the trees. There's this one huge oak tree that was in between the 2 ponds in the creek, and we would always get up in there. And since them deer and stuff would come down through our cornfields and stuff and feed, that was, and then a deer that I couldn't drop, Rascal would jump out of the tree on top of their backs and snap their necks. And of course, we would clean the deer up, dress them out. We'd bury the skins and guts and everything in the ground. Then we'd take off. Now, we did have a bad hunting experience. We were, this is back in 1988. We were hunting this huge herd of deer. It's about 20, 30 head. And I'd already had set up camp and all that. We'd already got 2 of the deer that morning. I dressed them out and I stretched the skins out because Amanda and Teresa said they was going to cure those skins and make me and Rascal a big old blanket. I'm like, okay. So I had a couple of coolers with a dry ice, and we put those 2 deer in dry ice. And then we got 2 deer in the afternoon. Why we didn't put them on dry ice, I don't know. But we had them hanging upside down on a tree limb. And we went right back out there to get 2 more deer because this was close to Thanksgiving and everybody was going to be in Thanksgiving and stuff. And I'm thinking, Rascal, we need to get us a whole lot of, because it's like this 5 or 6 doggone 2 or 3 turkeys for the whole family, including me and you, is not going to be enough. So we went back out there in the late afternoon and we got 1 more deer. So that made it a total of 5 deer. I started bringing it up and it was a big old doe. So I started going along there on my dad's 3-wheeler. When I come up there and Rascal was ahead of me and was coming up over the hill. He got up over the hill first, and all of a sudden I saw his mane go up and I saw his tail go stiff. His eyes went from a golden yellow to a deep red, and he started growling, and I saw his claws come out with the razors come out with his claws. And I'm going like, uh-oh. Wow, he went over the hill. I went around the hill because I'm thinking if he's gonna get into it with something, I'm gonna come around the whatever it was on its blind side. So I put in an extra 20-round clip on my Mini 14 and I flipped the night scope on. And I went around and I finally got there. Rascal was he gave 2 very, very loud warning barks. And when I got there to our camp was literally destroyed. our skins were gone. Them extra 2 deer that we had hanging up on the tree limb was gone. The camp was destroyed. And I had one of those and I had a flip phone, very first flip phone they had. And I called my grandfather. I told him what happened. He says, okay, you 2 boys stay there. I'm coming. We're coming to you. So Dad and Grandpa came up in my dad's truck, which was a teal green Ford F-150, 1975. They came up. They came up from an extra tent. We threw what was left of the tent in back of my truck. The 3 campfires were put out because I could see the smoke when it came up over. I knew there was something wrong when Rascal went over the hill and we saw the smoke. When we saw the smoke, Rascal went running ahead of me. I'm like, uh-oh. And what it was, but the footprints and all that, my grandfather said, them type 4s are back, type 4 Bigfoot. These were skinny type Bigfoot, but they were very tall, very lean, and they were very vicious. They get up to 7-8 foot tall. Being as skinny as they weren't like the type 1 and type 2 Bigfoots. These Bigfoot had a baboon face on them. And their eyes were either black or red. And so it was about 3 of them that went through mine and Rascal's hunting camp and just destroyed it. Took whatever they could and left. And we reset up our camp and set up 3 more campfires. And this time Dad and Grandpa stayed with us. And we got 3 more deer to replace the 2 we had lost. Then we quickly broke camp after getting those 2 deer, 3 more deer. We dressed them out and buried the guts and everything and took off back home. Me and Rascal were like literally exhausted. And everyone is asking me, what's the difference between a Dogman family or the differences between Dogman and Bigfoot? Well, here's the thing. Bigfoot is a total cannibal. You have got to watch it. They might act friendly, but don't let them get near you. Stay away. Now, Dogmen, even though they've had a bad rep, they more or less stay off to themselves and stay away. Now, there's a big difference between a Dogman family and a Bigfoot family. Dogman family, you're going to have an alpha male and an alpha female. Now, the alpha female controls the whole family pod. And when they build dens, they'll build 4 dens, but they'll build a 5th den away from all the other dens. That's for their dead. Now, the female, alpha female, she only mates with the alpha male. But here's the thing about Dogmen, they mate for life. And what I mean by that, the alpha female would choose, when there's other Dogmen around, male and female both, the alpha female would choose the mating pairs that will be mating for life. That keeps them from having like what I would call incest and all that. Bigfoot is way different. Bigfoot, when there's an alpha male and an alpha female, the alpha male mates with all the females. The other males don't get to mate. And the thing with another difference between Dogman and Bigfoot, Dogmen do not drive away their elderly or the ones that are too old to be alpha male and alpha females. Here's what happens with them. They stay with the old ones, or the old alpha males, and the old alpha females will help the controlling alpha female with the pups, help the dens cleaned out, help training the juveniles and everything, like how to swim, how to climb, and all that, how to forage for food. Now, with the Bigfoot, they'll drive out their elderly that they deem as no longer useful. They'll either drive them out or kill them. And now this is what my grandfather told me. And he's only told me very few of his experiences because he's really kept silent until Rascal came on the scene. And our first incident with Rascal, this was in 1989. I was sleeping on the couch. Our central heating air unit went out. So we had our huge living room window open because we'd take the screen out and took the glass out and everything. And at the time, Dad and Grandpa were sitting on the table while I was sitting at the table drinking coffee while I was sleeping on the couch that was only a few feet from the window. I wasn't feeling well. Rascal was laying down next to between Dad and Grandpa and the girls who were in the kitchen cooking. Well, and I rolled over on the couch and I looked up, halfway looked up, and I saw this 3 or 4 fingered hand coming down at me. I didn't think nothing of it. I thought it was Rascal, you know, playing around like we play around a few times. So I rolled back over. Then when I rolled back over and I opened up my eyes, all I saw was fangs and teeth jumping over me. It was Rascal because all I heard was a roar. And what it was, one of these, people call him a type 3 dog man, but it actually is a type 3, I call it a type 3 Bigfoot because this thing had a baboon face and sort of long ears, but not tapered like a dog man. And this thing was halfway over the window, reaching down from me. Rascal had jumped over me in the couch, and he kicked the couch, boom, right up against the wall, away from the window. And he had wrapped this thing into a damn headlock and bit its face. This fight didn't take over 2 or 3 minutes. And I heard the thing scream and then went limp. But while those two were going at it, they had tore that whole windowsill to pieces. And it was a fight. And after that, Rascal came running over to me. I was shaking up bad. The girls dove under the kitchen table. Dad and Grandpa grabbed their guns immediately. And Rascal came running over to me, started licking my face, kind of whining and stuff. I said, I'm okay, buddy. I mean, he was checking over me, looking to see if I was grabbed or cut or anything. It wasn't. And Dad and Grandpa, by the time they got to the doggone window, something had pulled that thing back through the window. Apparently this thing had 2 or 3 of its buddies with it. And when it pulled through there, Rascal jumped back up and he was at that window of Dad and Grandpa. He would not leave it. He wouldn't go outside the window, but he wouldn't leave it. He wouldn't leave that window neither, because we were in the house and he wasn't going to leave that house. And his eyes were blood red. Boy, he was mad. And that's when I found out, no, dogmen do not like Bigfoot. They are enemies. Because my grandfather said about dogmen, he says back during the time of Adam and Eve, it was his belief that that Adam and Eve can talk to the animals just like you and I are talking now, and we can understand each other. But when Satan came along, had Eve eat from the tree of good and evil, and gave it that, it all changed. And from that, he described the Bigfoot as a Nephilim, because he said during Noah's time, the Nephilim were enslaving regular people and enslaving the animals, including dogmen. He says this is why dogmen absolutely hate Bigfoot. And my grandfather says this is why you will never see dogmen and Bigfoot never get along. And I asked him about the hybrids then. He says that's where these juvenile Bigfoot, they'll be on the prowl, because the alpha Bigfoot will send these juveniles out, you know, when they go out scouting territory and stuff. They also scout out what my grandfather says, others to mate with. I said, what do you mean by others? He says usually single female dogmen that are gone out hunting. And what these juveniles will do, they'll capture the female dogman and start mating with her and drag her back to their family pod to keep their bloodline going. And he says that's where you get these very, very dangerous, vicious hybrids. I said, Grandpa, they are, dogman and Bigfoot are two different species. My grandfather says, yes. He says, but during Noah's time, the Bigfoot, who are Nephilim, who he said was a Nephilim, they had their own cities, their own language. This is another reason why they hate human beings so much, is like when they started sinning and started doing these experiments, he says, you can read through Genesis in the Bible and you could see it. He says, God punished the Nephilim and destroyed their cities with Noah's flood, destroyed their language and everything, and scattered them on all four corners of the earth. He says, this is why Bigfoot will always hate people. Now, I've heard, yes, and I've seen reports and stuff where Bigfoot are always friendly and stuff to people. And I've always thought of this, there's good and evil in everything, including dogmen. But you have to, especially, I'm always going to say this, you especially got to be very, very careful of Bigfoot. You have to, because they're cannibals. Here's the thing, with Bigfoot, they're opportunist hunters. And they'll just go after anything. It's like opportunity. Boom, there you go. They'll go through trash, they'll go through everything. Dogmen are way different. Dogmen are ambush hunters. I've learned this from Rascal, because they pick and choose their prey. and they are way more thorough than Bigfoot. And I'm gonna say Dogman is the excellent hunter. Is way better hunter than a Bigfoot will ever be. And our next and after that top 3 Bigfoot / hybrid Dogman, after Rascal killed it, later on that morning, we started, I got my rifle. My girlfriend got her 30-06. And my dad got his got his automatic 16 gauge, which was loaded with ball bearings, metal brass ball bearings. My grandfather got his double barrel 12 gauge long barrel. So we went out there, and Rascal went ahead of us. We went all the way through. We followed their tracks all the way through. We must have followed them a good, we did. We followed them good, I'm going to say 8 to 10 miles, all the way up to the LBL. In the back of our property, where our property connects up to the LBL, there's these 3 ground caves. You've got to be careful with these caves, or you step. These are like ground caves. You will step into them. These caves are not like any natural cave. They're kind of like step caves. They're like holes in the ground, but they're not holes in the ground. They're actually caves with these mounds coming up to them. And my grandfather says, okay, this is where they must have come. He says, we're not going to go in, because Rascal, once we started coming up these caves, Rascal was pushing us all back. He was pushing us all back. And I said, okay, guys. And my grandfather says, okay, guys, he's stopping us. We got to stop. And so we went back. Nothing else happened after that. In 1990, this is where I found out where Rascal really hated Dogman, hated these Bigfoot. This is in early spring, summer, when our corn was just coming in, and my grandfather was on his tractor, and I was walking through the fields. Well, when I was walking through the cornfields, Rascal was riding on the tractor with my dad, with my grandfather, and my dad was walking behind me because we had some sort of seed grass and stuff, big old bags of seed grass. He says, we're going to put that in the doggone corn bin we got over here. It's got 3 doors to it. This corn bin is about 8 foot tall, about 20 by 20. It was pretty daggone big. Well, I said, okay. So I grabbed up the bag, 30-pound bag, and I started walking towards the corn bin. I started to open up the right side door, and out burst this, what's called a no-head Bigfoot. He must have been in my grandfather still eating the corn mash. When he knocked open that damn door, if you could tell right here where I don't know if you can still see my head or something. You see right there where the scar is? That's where that door came up. That's where that door came up and hit me dead square in his face and split my whole head wide open. Rascal jumped off that doggone, and this thing just ran the hell over me. This damn thing was about 7 foot tall, heavily muscular. And that's when we all heard Rascal give up this war whoop. And this is one of the few times he wasn't wearing his razors with him. He just went straight at this thing. This thing saw Rascal, and it was running from it. And Rascal was on its thing, was on this damn thing's trail. I mean, going after it. They were doing like kind of like a running fight. And this thing was, I can tell where it was running to. It was trying to head back for the LBL because there's two big fence lines. One was ours, which was an electric fence, and the other one was the fence that the game wardens set up and stuff along the LBL and stuff, and the forest rangers. And Rascal, this is about 5 or 6 mile fight those two were into, because we could hear them fighting. And I could hear that thing screaming, because it was screaming like a woman in pain and stuff, because the Rascal was going after it. My grandfather went over to me. My dad, my grandfather, my girlfriend came over to me, took me back to the tractor, then propped me back up on the doggone truck, because Amanda had brought my truck. She'd sat me on the tailgate behind. I was bleeding profusely. And I was halfway out of it. I really was. Because I couldn't get my bearings or anything, because that thing had just hit me that damn hard. I'd gotten a severe concussion. And I can still, way back in the woods, towards the LBL, I can hear those two fighting. My dad and grandpa finally got up to where Rascal was. They said they got up to them two fence lines. They said there was nothing but blood, gore, pieces of Bigfoot and everything just hanging off the trees, hanging off the fence lines and everything. And one of my grandfather's best friends, who knew Rascal, he was working in the LBL. He says, "Hey, I saw Rascal." And he looked at Grandpa and he says, "Glenn, I saw Rascal." He says, "I don't know what the hell he was fighting, but it was just almost as big as him. And those two were taking," and so Rascal was ripping that thing to pieces. And after the fight was over, he says he saw Rascal jump back over the fences and take off back off towards y'all's property. And of course, when the fight was over, from that 5 miles, he was at a full, my grandfather's friend said he's a full run on all fours. So from that 5 miles and stuff, he was back to me in about 5-10 minutes, looking over me, looking my face and everything else, because Amanda just sewed my head up and gave me a couple of antibiotics. Then she made Rascal sit down and she was checking over him. He didn't have no cuts or anything on him, no bite marks or nothing, but he had a lot of blood and gore on him. And she took him down to the pond and cleaned him off. And what Dad and Grandpa could was got whatever was left of that no head, dragged it off with the tractor and took it down to the burning pile where we'd burned it and burned its bones down to powder in the burning pile. Now, the next incident, this was in 1992. This was really scary. This was a weak encounter. Now, Amanda and her little girl, Sally, lived right down from us, which is a mile or two, because our neighborhood has changed. We've now got 2 or 3 houses up beside Mom and Dad's house now, where there's only woods. And on top of the hill, there's a trailer park there where there was only woods. But next 2 hills over, that's where Amanda and Sally's house were. Well, Amanda came over to the house one morning. We were all drinking coffee and stuff, and I was drinking my coffee. Rascal's laying down beside us, and she brought Sally with her. I thought, okay, didn't think nothing of it. All of a sudden, little Sally broke into tears. She runs straight over to Rascal, wrapped her little arms around his neck, started crying. She had wrapped her arms around him so tight, he actually choked. I'm like, what's going on? And that's when she started crying and saying, please protect me from the monkey men. I said, monkey men? Amanda said, yes. She says, little Sally keeps crying for the past 2 weeks that there's these monkey men staring at her through the bedroom window. There must be 4 or 5 of them, she said, maybe more. I looked at Grandpa. Grandpa looked at me, and Dad looked down at Rascal. And I motioned Rascal to pick up little Sally and take her over to the couch. Now, Teresa and Rosie were already listening in on to this. And they moved the couch over, spread out a blanket, and Rascal laid down with little Sally all the way across the couch. We waited for little Sally to go to sleep. Then I motioned Rascal to come with me. I got out a 30-round clip from my Mini 14 this time because I wanted something a little bit longer range because my AK-47, it had a 700-yard range. Well, my Mini 14 had an 800-yard range. So I wanted a little bit of range, if you understand.
Mhm.
And I flipped my, when I got outside the front door and I started walking, Rascal was taking the lead. Dad and Grandpa went right behind me. Amanda stayed at the house with Rosie and Teresa. So I started walking. And I was already feeling we're being watched. And Rascal did too, because I can see his mane bristle up. And we continued walking all the way to Amanda's house. Okay, we took the front yard of Amanda's house, went around the front. Dad and Grandpa went around the back. And Rascal was taking the lead, and he went all the way around to the side where Sally's bedroom window was, and he poked his head around the corner of the house, and I saw him really bristle up. I stopped immediately, popped the caps off my scope, and waved halt to Dad and Grandpa, and they stopped immediately. And I did a wide circle around Rascal where I could see around the corner of the house. I thought, oh God, this ain't gonna be good. I didn't see nothing. But I looked down there on the doggone ground. I saw me, Dad, and Grandpa, we saw several different prints. One of these prints was 20 inches long, damn near 10 inches wide. This was a huge type 4. That scared me. That scared me bad. So I lifted up my rifle and I started scanning with my scope, and I caught 3 or 4 red eye shines. I'm like, and plus I heard something back there in the woods, heavy. I'm like, uh-oh, I think we're outnumbered. And Rascal's down there on all 4s. So I rubbed his shoulder. I says, buddy, let's get out of here. real slow, we're outnumbered here. And Dad and Grandpa were already heading back. And me and Rascal were the last ones to turn around and leave. And when we left, Rascal stayed directly behind me. And we got back to the house. And when we did, Rascal was the last one to walk through the front doorway. And when we got to the front doorway, I had Rascal close the door and lock the door. And my grandpa looks at Amanda and says, why don't you and Sally stay here with us for a couple of days? You'll be safe. She said, okay. So I'm going to say the first 2 nights, nothing much went on, but we heard a bunch of hoops and hollers back in the trees, kind of like, you know, like a monkey that goes whoop, 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 only, but these were real heavy hoops. I'm like, okay, this ain't gonna be good. I thought maybe that way gone. And now on our kitchen, we got a huge kitchen window. And at the house, the kitchen and my bedroom sits on top of the garage. And that's 14, 15 foot up. Now and that from the garage is our huge driveway when it circles around. Now when it circles around, we got this huge brick wall where I put all the wood for the fireplace. That wall is about 13 foot directly under the kitchen window. And along that kitchen window, there's 2 braces there for 2 spotlights. And these are very, very bright spotlights that can shine across 2 or 3 fields. And okay, and the 3rd night, everything got dead quiet. There was no sound, nothing. You couldn't even hear a pin drop. And you couldn't hear the night sounds or anything. It's like it got dead quiet, like there was something wrong. And the 4th night, it was the same way, but with that, we could hear these screams, and these screams would make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And this is directly in back of our cornfield. So after that, we went to sleep, and nothing really happened. Then the last night was the worst. Since these screams and everything would always happen at 11 o'clock at night. Well, this time they came a little bit earlier. Only these screams were a whole lot closer this time because we heard something going thud, thud, thud up against the house, and it sounded like rocks and limbs. And we'd turn around. My grandfather flipped on us on both spotlights, and along our tree line that's in back of our yard was maple trees. We had a long line of maple trees, and plus 1 maple tree right there in a dead square in the middle of the backyard. There were 3 juveniles along those trees. They were shaking the hell out of those trees. There was 1 juvenile. Well, he wasn't juvenile, he was a young adult. He was 7 foot. He was up on top of the middle maple tree, throwing limbs down at the house. In the middle of our driveway, directly at the bottom of our, about 75 foot away from the kitchen window, screaming at the house, was this 10-foot type 4 Bigfoot. This damn thing was huge. This must have been the alpha male. And Rascal's eyes were blood red. And my grandfather had already slipped his razors, and his claws were already out. And that means the razors were extended out to a full. Rascal had a cut thing all the way to 10 inches. Amanda and little Sally. I don't know what it is with these Bigfoot wanted with little Sally. They must have wanted her bad for them to attack our house like this. And they went, I shoveled all the girls into my bedroom under the, and shoved them all under my bed. I said, you all stay under there now. We popped open the side windows to the kitchen window and everything. We started shooting at these creatures. The one I was trying to hit, he was on top of the maple tree. I couldn't get a shot at his head, so I saw his knee pop out, and I shot him in the kneecap. He went falling out. He went falling out of the tree with a thud. This alpha male saw me do that and started throwing rip-rap rocks at the kitchen window. Thank God none of the rocks hit the window. And I started looking around for Rascal. I couldn't find him. What Rascal did, he'd slipped out of my window. And when I looked out the window of the kitchen window, and there was Rascal. He was sneaking along. He was sneaking along the wall, and he was up above this 10-foot Bigfoot. He jumped down on its back, rammed his claws and razors in the back of this thing's neck. And when this thing fell down onto its knees, he twisted its head off. Blood and gore went flying everywhere. Dad and Grandpa were still shooting at these other three that were behind the trees. And this one Bigfoot, the one I shot in the knee, I don't know how he was running, but he was running straight at Rascal. Rascal jumped up 10 foot in the air. He swung his left round out, his left hand out, and he cut this thing across the throat, decapitating it. And it fell face first, splat, right there on the ground. So we had two dead Bigfoot right there in front of the kitchen window. One of the Bigfoot juveniles popped his head up from the other trees. This is about the middle tree on the far side. And my dad and my grandfather shot it in the head. And then I saw it flop over. The other two grabbed their companion and dragged him off back across the fence, then back across the cornfields. And they headed back towards the caves where they were holed up. That fight lasted from 10 o'clock at night to about 1 o'clock in the morning, because it was like a war going on, because we were unloading I know I wasted at least 2 boxes of 223 military jacketed ammo on these things. I was scared half to death. The girls, they were under the bed and everything, screaming and crying. still have nightmares of this. And in the morning, it's 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. We got up. I didn't sleep at all. We got up. Rascal, he'd already come back directly after that fight. It was 1:30 in the morning. When Rascal walked through the door, Grandpa and Amanda immediately grabbed him because he was cut and everything else and had gore all over him. Dad and Grandpa and Amanda took Rascal immediately to the bathroom, laid him down in the tub. They washed him down, sewed up his wounds, and pumped him with a whole lot of antibiotics. And plus rabies shots too. After that, I couldn't sleep, but Rascal laid down beside me. And I guess I passed out about 6 o'clock in the morning. Dad had gave me some coffee and stuff. He said, son, get up, we got some work to do. Because Grandpa and Rascal were already outside. So me and Dad and the girls, we went out there too, all except for little Sally and Teresa. Teresa kept little Sally in the house with her. Amanda and Rosie came with me and they were helping me drag this one Bigfoot to the burning pile. What we did, we got some wood, seasoned wood, piled up in the burning pile, along with brush and everything else. And we threw the Bigfoot on top of the brush and everything, including what was left of their heads that were decapitated. And we started burning these Bigfoots because we didn't want, the authorities and stuff coming over and start snooping around. And of course, Jack Day, he was a sheriff. He was our cousin. He was a sheriff. He came over. He saw it burning. And he walked over and petted Rascal, and he knew Rascal too. And so did the two deputies. They come in and they said, "What happened?" I said, "Look at the side of the house." And there was walls. There was holes in the house on the side of the house. We had to fix the house up and everything. Repaired the house, which took us a couple of weeks to do. After we got through burning in Bigfoot, after we burned their bodies and everything, then their bones were still red hot and everything. We piled them bones up with shovels and everything, and then put more wood on top of them and put old motor oil on them bones, and we burned them down too. Then in the afternoon, we went back to the house exhausted. Rascal went in with us. We all fell asleep. And at night, we were all sitting there. This is after dinner and stuff. We were all sitting there relaxing and stuff. I was looking at Rascal and he was looking out the window and his eyes were red again. My grandfather said, "Okay, everybody get ready. Here we go." And what we did, my grandfather flipped on one spotlight and he shined it out there where the burning pile was, where there were them other two Bigfoot that we didn't get. What they were doing. This is how I know they were cannibals. They were eating the bones that didn't burn up, and they were eating the ash of their two comrades that we had burned. And after we watched them for about 2 or 3 hours eat all that ash and those bones, they walked off and left back through the cornfields. And my grandfather says, "Okay, I think we've had enough of this." So in the morning, this is 7 o'clock in the morning, we got on his tractor and we took off out there. I was walking. We walked a couple of miles all the way back here to where the caves are. And we saw the caves, we saw bones like you wouldn't believe. We saw cow bones, we saw horse bones, pig bones, bones from our next door neighbors because they had some sheep that were missing. And that's the thing with these Bigfoot. They would go after livestock and everything because it's easy prey for them. And my grandfather is okay through here. What he did, he had a blade on the front of that tractor, and what he did, he pushed up all that brush, plus a whole bunch of broken trees and stuff that were falling, and we dragged them on top of these caves, and we set the brush and everything on fire because he pushed the motor oil down there, made sure it went all the way down there in them caves too. And they had me and Rascal sit up on top of the hill, and I was sitting up there with my rifle, thinking, well, since we set these caves on fire, they're going to be coming flying out of there. Well, they didn't, because these caves, it's a whole cave system that goes under our property all the way back to the LBL, which means there's another entrance to these caves that's at the LBL. And we never saw those two Bigfoot ever again. That was a really bad experience. And I had met other cryptids too. When after that incident, next incident was with cogways. There's two different types of, I want to say two different types of cogways, but I'm thinking there's three. One cogway has a baboon face, round ears, looks like a Bigfoot. The second type is what my grandfather would call a fake dogman, because it would have high tapered ears, but it would have 4 ears, a pair of ears within a pair of ears. And they had it like a dog face type. Now the third one, Gogwai, it was real thin and long and had a deer head and antlers. This is what around in Western Kentucky we would call a deer spirit. I hated them damn deer spirit. They were the worst. I'm thinking just as bad as the other Gogwai. My first experience with the deer spirits came right after our house incident, a house attack. My best friend Tony was with me. We were going to what's called the, Midnight Harvest Fest, the first day of deer season, first night of deer season, what's called Harvest Moon. Well, my grandfather told all of his friends and all of Dad's friends, well, he says, we got a surprise for you all. We're going to have an extra hunter with us. Said, all right. Well, Jack Day was with him. It was his night off. And to the deputies, they were hunters too. They knew what he meant. Well, I came up the truck with me and Tony, and Rascal was in the back. And everybody looked, and when I stepped out, at first Rascal stepped out he walked out on all fours, and everybody didn't really think nothing. It was like huge. That's a huge dog. It was funny. And until he stepped up and started walking behind me bipedal, and their jaws kind of dropped. And then we all took off in groups, started deer hunting. Now we were deer hunting. This is why I don't like deer hunting at night all that much. I don't. I mean, it's dangerous enough when you're with a friend or something, or even by yourself. But it was just as dangerous, even though we had Rascal Type 2 Dogman protecting us. It was just as dangerous because me and Tony, we'd shot 2 deer and we were tracking them. And you couldn't see nothing. This is a bad night because there were no stars out, no moon, no nothing. It was just one of them nights where, you know, it was pitch black. You couldn't see nothing. You couldn't see 2 feet in front of you. And Rascal was directly behind me and Tony. And I popped on my flashlight and stuff, and I saw the 2 deer laying there at the old dry, in an old dry creek where they finally bled out. And Tony says, all right, let's go. We started hustling down there, and we should have just walked instead of hustled. We started hustling down there. Then something dropped down in front of us, 10 foot away from us. And Rascal immediately jumped over us and stood between us and it. I saw this thing. It was real thin, 6.5, 7 foot tall, grayish brown hair on it. This thing was the ugliest thing I've ever seen. It had a body of a Bigfoot, but it had a deer head with some of the most vicious looking razor teeth I have ever seen. Looked like shark teeth. Rascal immediately punched this thing in the face. I mean, this was like one of these haymakers, a right haymaker. When he punched it in the face, it spun around. And it started backpedaling because I think it knew it wasn't strong enough to take on Rascal, because Rascal, he was really built. He was really, like I said, he was really strong and really built, and he went after it. It thing screamed like a small child. It jumped back 60 foot, and Rascal jumped right along with it, punching it. Rascal even grabbed it by the antlers like this and went whoom, rammed its face down on the ground. And its feet flew up in the air, and we knew the fight was on. And he was punching this thing, and the thing was running. Everybody back at the lodge was hearing this fight. I said, Tony, throw our doggone deer on the back of the three-wheeler now, and let's take off. And we took off. Oh, Rascal was fighting this thing because we can hear him fighting. And after 5 minutes, I turned around and Rascal was right behind us directly, but he was watching in back of him. And we got back at the lodge of our deer, and everybody else had them a deer. And they were all running up to us. What happened? What happened? What happened? I said, we heard this commotion. I says, I don't know. I said, I saw this 2-legged deer thing with a 3-fingered claws, and it had nails about 2 inches long, and they were black. And this thing had squinted eyes, squinted square like topo eyes. No pupils whatsoever that I could see. This thing looked like Tony called it Bambi from hell. You know, I tend to agree with him. And its feet, it had hoof-like feet. The back of its heels had a hoof, but it had 2 toes protruding out of that hoof. That's what was. I'm sorry I didn't have a camera, but I can only describe what it looked like. And it was real thin. And I can tell you, Rascal was punching and hitting the hell out of it. And when we got back, my grandfather says, "All hail the deer spirits." And everybody grabbed their guns, picked up, and what we got in two separate groups, and we let Rascal take the lead. This is up there, was up along the Ohio River. And so we took off to the field where Rascal showed us where he's fighting this thing. With 2 or 3 spotlights, we followed its tracks and stuff. Its tracks stopped in the middle of the field. I mean, just stopped. We didn't see where it went. It couldn't have jumped that daggone far. My grandfather started getting real scared. He's like, "Okay, guys, we're going to split up in 2 groups." One group went east, back towards town, following the Ohio River that way when it connects up to the Cumberland River. Me, Tony, and Dad and Rascal took up west, up towards the other town, Tulu. We started walking and walking. We didn't find no traces of this creature, and neither did they, because we thought it backtracked. Apparently it didn't. And my grandfather said it must have went through what he would call a dimensional doorway or something, supernatural. I guess that's what some of these cogways are, because they're physical too.
Yeah.
And we all picked up our stuff, left the doggone lodge, and we all went home. And we didn't speak anything else about it. The other incident with the cogway, this was 95. Me and Rascal was in back of our fields. We had 3 or 4 fields, but nothing but corn. You got to kind of watch it because you'll get lost in that corn. What it was, man, Rascal had 2 big old burlap sacks. We want to pick up some corn because we were picking up regular yellow corn. And then another field over, we had white corn. We was really picking that white corn. While we was picking the white corn, we was walking up through there and stuff. Thought I heard something following us. I stopped, and Rascal was looking behind. It was already looking behind us. His ears kind of perked up. His eyes turned red, and I said, "Uh-oh." I said, "Buddy, what's following us? Let's go home." He said, "Okay." And I was like, "Okay." And so here we go. I'm thinking, I heard it when we stopped, it stopped. I was, for some strange reason, I thought, well, this is Dad and Grandpa. They were in a good mood all day anyhow. And I thought, Rascal, I think they're playing a joke on us. Let's turn around, go back to where it was following us, and cut down and go to the fence and come back up. Well, that's what we did. When we got to the fence line, that's where I saw this, what's called a fake dogman / cogway. This thing was a good 8 foot. It was thin. All I heard was this growl. And when I heard that growl, Rascal had immediately turned and he jumped at this thing. He had his metal claws, and this thing tried to jump back from him, but Rascal had always stabbed. His hand went out like that, and it went through the thing's chest. He impaled it right then and there on the spot. That's when I was saying, and its mouth was going like a reflex reaction, death reaction. And when he pulled it, he pulled its heart out immediately. I mean, in one fast stroke. All I could hear was this crunch, then this. But I would, like the squishing of meat being pulled apart. and the thing fell flat on its face. Of course, I called Grandpa on the cell phone, and him and Dad come up out of the cornfields, and they dragged it off, and we burned it in the burning pile too. That was real scary. And he says, you two boys need to be careful. I said, it was hunting both of you. I said, well, Grandpa, I think it ran into Rascal, and there wasn't no hunt to it. Last cogway we run into, this is where me and Rascal was just doing our usual camping by the biggest pond next to the creek, directly in back of our cornfields. It was on a Saturday night. We were sleeping. This is my first day on my vacation. I was feeling pretty good. So we were sleeping in the back of the truck. And what it was, this real young cogway with two other Bigfoot. They were young juveniles. I think they were out what's called counting coup. I don't know if you've ever heard that term before, where they throw pebbles and stuff.
Okay.
Well, they were throwing pebbles up against the truck, and Rascal was sleeping right up against me, and I was sleeping. My face was buried in his hair and all that, in his mane. I kept hearing a ping, ping, ping upside the truck. And I kind of raised my hand and said, what is that noise? Rascal kind of raised his head up, and this rock about this big around hit him dead square in the muzzle. And you talk about pissed. He come up off it. He come off the back of that truck, standing up. And there was these two, and there's this little cogway, and this and one of the juvenile Bigfoot, Rascal was staring both them young ones down, and they both took off. Now there was one underneath the truck, and I'm like, uh-oh. Rascal saw that. He reaches down, grabs him by the hair of the head, and face punches him 5 or 6 times in the face. I mean, boom, 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 boom. And its face was caving in. He was hitting it so damn hard. These two this little cogway and his buddy come back, grabs their other buddy he was punching in the face, grabbed him by the feet and pulled him out from under the truck, and they all three took off, and we didn't see him again. I'm like, oh boy. And that later that morning we went home. We could see where they would drag them off back across the fields and stuff. That was pretty funny. And then the other day, and the next funny thing, oh, this was real funny. I was doing something. This is when I was in the house. This is in the morning now. I was working on the satellite TV, and getting all the channels fixed up to it and stuff. Teresa and Rosie were sitting on the couch. They were both reading books and stuff, and waiting for me to get out of the way so they can watch TV. So I got out of the way so they watched TV. Rascal was kind of like in the foyer in front of the door. All of a sudden, the front door flies open. This guy came in. I guess he was going to try and rob us. And the funny thing of it was, he met Rascal. Rascal met him nose to nose. the guy looks at Rascal, sees what he's looking at, turns and screams like a little girl. Rascal grabs him by the seat of the pants, tears his pant, rips his pants clean off him. The guy is not wearing any underwear. He is bare-assed. We're talking bare-ass too. And he chased him right on up that doggone catalpa tree. My grandfather's looking at like my grandfather's looking down like this. I'm looking like this. My dad's was coming through the living room, was coming through the dining room going like, what the hell's going on? And both the girls were sitting on the couch going, and Rascal's at the bottom, is at the foot of that tree, sitting there, kind of like how a dog will sit. That's how he was sitting, with the guy's pants hanging out of his mouth. The guy's up there in this darn tree with his bare ass hanging down. My grandfather says, hold on, let me call the sheriff. He calls the sheriff. Here comes Jack. I've seen Jack Day's patrol car come in. It's a brand new sheriff's car too, a brand new one. He's going to show us to it. And he steps out there, looks up in the tree, looks at Rascal, looks up in the tree. He walks over at Rascal, looks at Rascal. He's jerks his pants out of his mouth. He says, give me those. And he looks at me and says, Robert, take Rascal into the house, please. I said, okay. I said, come on, Rascal. Rascal gets up, walks bipedal into the house with me. Sheriff looks up at Knucklehead, and he says, okay, sunshine, come on down. It's all over. And the guy puts his pants on. He handcuffs him and sits him down in the back of the sheriff's car. And he looks at the guy. He says, son, you went to the wrong house to break into. He says, let me tell you about the neighborhood around here. We all got guard dogs like that. And you went to the wrong one. And we never saw that guy again. It was funny. The guy's face was flat out white, because when he was scared, I mean, he was scared. It was funny. I'm like, oh boy. It was funny. And then what? And I showed Rascal when he was much younger, the whole 400 to 500 acres of our family homestead. And I told him, this is your home too. And here's how he would mark his territory. He would go up to a tree, reach up and do a claw mark, a 5-finger claw mark at the V of, how trees will naturally branch out into a V. He would make a mark on that V on every other tree. And what we would do, what I would consider dangerous, our property line goes from Highway 453 to the Tennessee River, back over to Highway 70 to Cumberland River. I mean, this was a lot of territory. Me and Rascal would patrol that. That's when I had my AK-47 with me and my Mini 14, plenty of ammo, but we wouldn't carry hardly no food or anything with it, because we'd travel light. And when we would sleep, we wouldn't sleep on the ground. Nuh-uh. We'd sleep up in the trees for good reason, for protection and all that. And we'd do the patrol to keep these cryptids not just away from our house, but away from our friends and everything else. Now, I don't know if you've heard of the Bigfoot outlaws. Have you not?
No.
Okay, they got this thing where they call Purgatory Road, and how scary it was. Let me tell you something. Highway 70 is a whole lot worse than this Purgatory Road. It makes Purgatory Road look like Romper Room, and I'm not kidding. Because the people that live from Thailand to Smithland, which is my hometown where I raised Rascal, that highway there, it's okay to travel it from 7 o'clock in the morning, but at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it would not be a good idea to travel that road. It really wouldn't. Because there are things there. My grandfather says, and I've never seen this, but I do believe him. He says there are 2 Indian graveyards there on our property that are still there today. And there are things that happen on that damn highway that even scares me to this day. Because there's these things that when Highway 70 gets close to the river, there's always these beaver dams. And most of these beaver dams are abandoned. But you don't go near those abandoned beaver dams because there's something else in those abandoned dams. And these things, I don't know if you ever heard them before, they're called rakes, which is these upright walking, and they're no more than 4 to 5 foot tall, full grown. They have pale, slimy, grayish skin. And they either have fish-like eyes or snake eyes. They'll have 2-fingered hands with claws, and they'll have a thin mouth lined with what I would call shark's teeth. And they'd have 4-toed lizard type feet. And they'd have some of them would have a dorsal fin go from their neck all the way down their back like a fish. And we've ran into a few of those on patrol too. Rascals even killed 2 of them. Because one came at me. And he just backhanded it. Smacked it up against a tree and killed it. The other one, this is when we were fishing. Me and my grandpa were fishing. We were catching real good fish. We had a huge tub of catfish. Rascal loved catfish. And of course, Rascal was laying there in the truck behind us. In fact, he was on the other side of the truck. You couldn't see him. We heard this hiss out of the brush. Turned around, here come this salamander type thing with his arms stretched out and stuff, and its mouth wide open, hissing and everything at us. Here came Rascal. He jumped over the truck and got between us and it. And the thing charged at him, and he grabbed it by the neck, slammed it on the ground. While he's holding it by the neck, he grabbed its body and he pulled it apart and threw it in the river. That didn't last very long. Because when Rascal ever got wounded in a fight, see, he had an advantage that the other dogman, and I'm going to say these other cryptids didn't have, because he had us, because he could get antibiotics, medicines, get sold and taken care of, and he'd be back in a couple of days. And it's like this, and these other cryptids, they get wounded and everything else. You know, they don't have the advantage that Rascal had. Once you get wounded and you get infected, you're just good enough. You might as well say you're dead. And then just before he met his mate, Rascal. We were doing something stupid. We were hunting a deer hunting at night. We were sitting up at trees. We were sitting up there in the trees, a different place this time, right across from Highway 70, along the Sugar Creek Road. We were sitting real high up in a tree, about 60, 70 foot up. And I thought I saw something that looked like headlights. And I said, well, someone's coming down the road. But I couldn't hear no engine. I couldn't hear nothing. And I said, well, that's strange. Until I saw one of those lights. It went straight up the tree. And when I could see this damn thing clearly, it was white with an orange in the middle of it, like an eyeball. And it was right on the tree, straight across from us, about 50 yards away. Rascal started growling. I didn't know what this thing was. And I told my grandfather, because wow, when Rascal growled at it, the thing stopped and it turned around and it looked like it blinked like an eyeball. Then it went straight down that tree, took off down the road, and we didn't see it no more. I said, Rascal, let's get the hell out of here. And we did. And what he did, when he got down on the ground first, he grabs me, throws me on top of his back, and takes off running all fours to the truck, because we were about a good 4 miles away from the truck. And it didn't take us over 4 or 5 minutes to get there, because when he was running, it felt like he was literally flying. And of course, when we got home, I told Grandpa, he says, you guys run into what's called bad spirits. This is something that him and Grandma has always said, be careful, because there's something worse than Booger Man, which is Bigfoot out there. I says, you do not want to run across one of these things. Because we also, and Grandpa also with Rascal, ran into the same thing in our cornfields. Here's what Grandpa and Dad did. They went out there to the cornfields with holy water and Epsom salt and ran around that whole thing. And they did the same thing to where me and Rascal saw that thing out there by Highway 70 along our property line. They did the very same thing, and we didn't see these things anymore. That kind of unearthed me right then and there. I still have kind of like bad nightmares about them things, though, but the nightmares go away when I think about Rascal. Then comes to the time where Rascal had found a mate. She was about 5 foot, light brown, tan hair. Kind of real thin, but you could tell she was female because she had human breast, 4 of them, human type breast. She was a true type 3 hyena dogman. Real bright, pretty green eyes. And this is where Rascal went out alone 2-3 days, by himself. And when he came back, he had laid down with me and I was sleeping. We were both sleeping, and Grandpa comes in the bedroom. And I knew he was looking at the window. About halfway over the house, and Grandpa said, well, who is this little cutie? I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, And I turned around and I saw this little brown, and I saw this brown muzzle going along the windowsill. I could see the nose clearly as a day. I kind of leaned over, and I could tell it was another dog man. And she looked at me and I looked at her. Then I turned around and looked at Rascal, and Rascal was wagging his tail, laying there looking at me. I said, "You got a girlfriend." And that was the last 5 years of his life. And that he had, and Grandpa named her Lucy. And pretty soon what my grandfather did, because we had this little lean-to shed. It kept it real clean and everything else, and he always had hay there and stuff. So he positioned the hay out, just for her. And as the weeks went over, it is a good 2 or 3 months, she started warming up to us and stuff, especially when Rascal was around. I found out, well, she's an alpha female and Rascal's an alpha male. So, and pretty soon when she got to know us, then she slowly started, actually coming into the house and everything. Of course, I was kind of scared, her being in like a wild dog, man. But here's the thing, this is how intelligent they are. They can tell whether you're good or evil, because it's like this. They can sense, when they use their telepathic, they can sense whether you're good or evil. And I found out she could understand us like Rascal could understand us. And she made a connection with Teresa, big time. So pretty soon she started sleeping with Teresa. So my grandfather and my dad were thinking, this is pretty good. He says, this is luck. We got 2 dog men with us now. Well, and yeah, that wasn't such a bad thing. Because when me and Rascal go out hunting and stuff, she would kind of stay back at the house. But she could hunt too. She is like a fast hunter. She'd run them to us. Because my dad's best friend, who was still a forest ranger, he'd always tell us, like, some of their elk would get out loose. You don't want to do no elk hunting. No. That's one of them deer on steroids. They get up to be 1,000 pounds. And me and Rascal tied into one of those elk one time because my grandfather put a deer stand up there right beside the big pond. Here come one of these suckers crashing through the brush and everything. I said, aha. And I'm like, oh, hell. And I shot it in the chest and it runs straight at me. Knocked the dog on me and the deer stand into the cold water of that stupid pond because it was in the middle of the winter. Snow on there and everything else. And Rascal pulls me out of the pond real quick, but he also jumped on top of that elk and snapped its neck. We dragged that sucker home. That was about 800-900 pounds of fresh meat there. And then after that, this is where this is something that really weird happened. We were hunting. This was early morning. This is the first hunt actually with Lucy. Me and Rascal were on top. We're in our favorite oak tree in between the 2 ponds. And with Lucy, what she would do, she'd track these deer, then run 2 or 3 up to us. I'd wound both of them and Rascal jump down and break their necks. And what we would do, right, this is during the winter. And Amanda and Teresa came up with Grandpa's truck. We told them go ahead and take 2 deer, because this is right around Christmas time. We told them go ahead and take 2 deer. Me and Rascal and Lucy were going to stay here, and we're going to get about 2 or 3 more deer for the Christmas dinner and all that. Well, Lucy, instead of staying with me and Rascal, she decided to go back home with Amanda and Teresa. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Me and Rascal can get 2 more deer, no problem. After they had left, 15 minutes after they left, it started snowing real damn hard. And of course, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You know how winter gets when you start snowing, it gets real dark. But everything is light, is kind of like lighted when, you know, when the fresh snow's on the ground. Well, me and Rascal was up there. I was relaxing up against him, half asleep. And I kept hearing a crunch, 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 crunch on the ground below us. Of course, we're 40, 50 foot up. I'm thinking, maybe that's Lucy come back, you know. And Rascal, he was halfway sleeping too, but his ears was turning. He was listening. And all of a sudden, he flips around and puts me up against the tree. I'm like, what in the world? And I turn around and look down. Here is this silver-haired, black-faced, red-eyed, ape-like dog white coming up to us. Rascal, who had his metal razors on him, of course they had folded up into the usual brass knuckles with 4 blades sticking out. This thing come up, when it come up, he went pop, 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 pop in its face and caved its face in and killed it. When it was coming down out of the tree, he was following down with it, punching it in the face. And when they both hit the doggone ground, they hit the ground with a hard thud. And when Rascal got up, the thing wasn't moving at all. And of course, he was rubbing his shoulder. I got down out of the tree and I checked his shoulder out, and he kind of whined. And I said, "Oh, buddy, you got your shoulder, you know, messed up." And what he did, he popped it out of socket when he was punching this thing. We got our last 2 deer and tied them out of the tree, let them drop to the ground. And I dragged both of them. I made Rascal get in the truck, and I took both these deer, dragged them, and threw them in the back of the truck, closed the tailgate, and we took off. And when I got back at the house, I told Grandpa what happened. This is on the 23rd of December too. And my grandfather went back out there because everything, this is one of the Christmas holidays. I'm going to say it was real eerie. It had all of us on the edge real bad. So we went out there. Me and Grandpa and Dad went out there to where this thing's body was. We went out there, it wasn't there. We could see a blood trail where it looked like it had been dragged. And I was wondering, I said, "Do you think they're back at these caves?" Well, this time my grandfather took a tractor out there and we went out there. And this time Lucy went with us because Teresa and Rosie and Amanda made Rascal stay because his his shoulder was hurt, but he was wanting to come, and they said, no, you stay. Lucy went with us. I'm kind of glad she did. I mean, she may be small, but you see, she's a type 3 hyena dogman. She can flat out whip, she can hold her own and then some. So she went out there with us. We went out there to these caves. I know she started sniffing around the caves, but she came back to us. I said, well, they're not here at the caves. Where the hell did they go? Only thing I know of, they went. Because we found their tracks along the Cumberland River. This is how they get to our property through the LBLs, travel the river. When they travel the river, they get around the other dogmen that live at the LBL. That's how they sneak around. And they must have snuck around or dragged their companion. And I guess they ate him. So we went back home. And Lucy kept looking behind us. Kept looking and kept looking. And her green eyes went dark. And she did kind of like a whiny growl. That kind of scared me because I whipped around there and turned and looked behind me. I couldn't see nothing because it was dark. Now, here's the thing about dogmen. Dogmen can see in the dark like a cat. They can see in the dark. I'm thinking sometimes better in the day. And when Lucy said to us, she said, they're gone. That's all she said. They're gone. I'm like, okay, good. Because we're gone too. We got it back at the house. We, had Christmas presents and everything and ate, but everything went well that Christmas. But it's like this, when it got dark, I don't know why. All of us couldn't sleep. We kind of like, sleep for an hour, be up for an hour, sleep, like kind of like the broken sleep thing. And nothing else happened after that. And that was one of them strange holidays. Then my grandfather, introduced Rascal to a football. That was one of his favorite toys. And I said, uh-oh, this ain't gonna be good. This is one of these days where it's been raining. We got a 3-acre backyard. I had. And my grandfather says, come on, Rascal, because he liked the rough house of Rascal anyhow, him and Dad both. He started pitching his football in the air, and Rascal was watching that football. He was really interested on that football. And I'm like, okay, here we go. I'm in the kitchen watching this. I'm like, God, please don't be playing around the football. And it's just been wet and everything else. Well, here we go. He pitches the football in the air. Him and Dad started chasing the football. Rascal was right behind them trying to get that football. I'm like, oh, Lord, here we go. Rascal would tackle and grab that football. Dad and Grandpa be on top of them. They were over swimming around. Okay, here comes some of the neighbor kids. They got in with it. I said, oh, this ain't even going to be good. And they all started playing with the football, chasing and everything else, getting the yard all muddy and all that. I tell you what, this damn yard was so damn muddy. It'd make a whole doggone farm of pigs gush with envy. Turn that whole damn backyard into one big, massive mud hole. It's like this. They were all covered in mud. Rosie comes out there. She looks at the front. She looks at that kitchen window. She says, oh, ain't nobody coming to this house looking like that. She went through the back door, downstairs, through the garage, grabs out the water hose, makes all of them stand side by side while she hosed every one of them down. This was something else. I mean, I was there at the kitchen table. I was rolling. I was laughing my head off. And of course, I introduced him to basketball. He got pretty good with the basketball. He'd bounce a basketball and it'd land, it'd go through the hoop. Now, okay. Those were like the real fun times with Rascal. And when we would, during the summertime and stuff, we'd bring deer in. Our next door neighbors would bring sides and orders and all that because I'd be barbecuing. I had these 2 big barrel smokers welded together, and I would be smoking anywhere from deer to pork to beef. And we'd all be sitting down there and even in we'd have huge kettles for the catfish. We'd have huge fish fries. Everybody be there. I mean, it was, believe it or not, it was a lot of fun for Rascal. And it's like this, when Rascal was there, I'm gonna tell you right now, we didn't lose any livestock, and neither did any of our neighbors. But before Rascal, it's like every other turn of the season. Didn't matter if it's spring, fall, winter, summer, we'd be missing livestock, especially pigs and cows, and sometimes horses. Because these Bigfoot, these top 4 Bigfoot and cogways, they'd see them and they'd charge straight at them. Kill 1 or 2. Our next door neighbor, who was a farmer, Mr. Clinton. This is when I was on the 3rd patrol of Rascal. He'd called up my grandfather, said, I'm missing my prize pick. This is a big old boar, about 1,000 pounds. He says, I've been missing it for 3 or 4 days. I can't find him. And Grandpa says, where was he last? He said, I saw him last, but I also saw Rascal too. And Rascal was going along. He said he knew Rascal was deer hunting. He had gotten 2 deer and he's packing them back. And he says, that's the last time I saw my hog. And he asked, do you think Rascal would have got the hog? And I'm like, everybody's looking at me and says, no. Well, we went out to his hog pen where he saw his hog last, and I looked down there and there was a huge, these human-like prints that was definitely Bigfoot. And my grandfather says, yep. He says, SOBs grabbed your hog. Of course, we went down there to the caves, and there was what's left of the hog. We saw its head, and we saw the bones and everything scattered all over the place. I mean, this is why we do not like Bigfoot at all. I mean, when you lose livestock like that, I mean, it's like this, that comes into some serious money.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, those Bigfoot were nothing but, and they were highly destructive too. They would put up tree structures on our properties and stuff, and Rascal see these tree structures, he'd tear them down. He'd defecate on them, and he would urinate all the way around the area. And of course, we'd be in the house, and he'd be laying beside me when I was in my recliner. I have the window open. We could hear them things scream way back in the back because Rascal had tore down their tree structures. I mean, them things would be mad too. And sometimes the neighbor kids, they'd be playing in our backyard and stuff too. And Rascal be laying there in the backyard watching them. But I would turn on that doggone one of those usually smaller spotlights, and I'd beam it across the fields back there, and I can see red eyes shine and everything else for those things to be watching those children, but they wouldn't come near because number one, there was Rascal.
Mm.
I mean, it just seems like these cryptids would be, especially the Bigfoot, would be watching
Yeah.
from time to time. And then when Lucy came on the scene, we didn't see him at all. Because I think what it was, when Rascal found Lucy and they became mates, you know, one dog man was hard enough on these cryptids that try to come across our property, but when there's two dog men working together, they leave completely, thank God. Because I remember when first time Lucy came in heat, these juveniles followed her to our backyard. There's about 3 of them. She whipped around on them, killed 2 of them, and that third one was badly wounded and he limped off. I mean, the fight didn't last about 3 or 4 minutes because Rascal went charging out there and he got the third one. Didn't take him long to get it neither, because it got up to, from our backyard where Lucy had already killed them first 2. There's a gravel road separating our backyard with the first field before you get to the cornfields. It got halfway, that wounded one got halfway through the first field, halfway only, and Rascal leaped on top of it and snapped its neck. And of course, there was 3 more that we had to get, that we burned, which we did. And then we found out that Lucy was pregnant with Rascal's first group of pups. And of course, Sheriff was there visiting, Jack Day, our cousin. And Jack and Grandpa and Dad were talking. They were real excited. And they said, Rascal and Lucy are going to have pups. And they all started asking, well, can we have a pup? and even Grandpa and the sheriff were talking. He says, what would the benefits if we could train one of those pups to be like, you know, for search and rescue and all that, canine and all that? And it's like, as intelligent as they are, and when they bond with you, they'll bond with you telepathically too. Because when Rascal bonded with me telepathically, he would tell me that the cogways were evil and the Bigfoot were evil. But he said the deer spirits and rakes were demons. Now, this could be true because of the way some of these cryptids act. Because Rascal, because I think we run into a shapeshifter. Oh yeah, this was scary. And he would, the shapeshifter, that was scary. We were driving home, me and Rascal, Lucy with us, who was going on the first fishing trip with. We got a whole bunch of fish. And it got about 9, 10 o'clock at night. This is in the early fall. We were going along there 25, about 45 miles an hour. And I looked off to the side of the road, and this looked like, at first I thought it was another dog man. And Lucy and Rascal started growling real bad because this thing was running. But until we got up to town, it veered off to the river. And of course, it was real foggy up through there and stuff. And it went through the fog, and I stopped on top of the hill. I looked down and I didn't see it no more. Rascal looked at me and he said, "It's gone." I said, "Okay," and we hurried back home with our catch and everything. That was kind of scary. Then it comes to the last fishing trip we went. This was in the LBL. Me and Grandpa with Rascal. Lucy was at home sleeping because she had lost that whole litter of pups. This is what usually happens when alpha male and alpha females. They will usually lose their first litter of pups. And I don't know why. I mean, it's just one of those things. And we buried the pups where Rascal's buried at now. I'm back at my family's home. And back at Mom and Dad's house, where there's an oak tree planted on top of him, because it's a huge mound where he is. I got a picture of it if you want to see it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And this rake jumps out. It charges right at Rascal for some reason. It was foaming at the mouth. And Rascal charged at it. Well, this thing kind of flipped and it bit him on the arm. This enraged Rascal. Rascal grabbed it by its head, slammed it down on the ground, held its head on the ground, and just pulled it apart 3 ways and killed it right then and there on the ground. And Rascal came back to me and Grandpa, and his arm was bleeding and stuff. I said, "Uh-oh, this ain't good." We took him home. We didn't catch too much fish. This is one time we didn't catch all that many fish. But we weren't concerned with that. We were concerned with Rascal. We got him home, and Amanda gave him shots and everything and antibiotics. And his arm healed up real good. We was watching over him for 3 or 4 months, just to make sure. Then one afternoon, he really wasn't eating. This is in the year 2000. Week before he died. And he started getting real sick, and I noticed he was losing weight. He kept losing weight. Because he had a parvo type virus. That's what Amanda and Teresa said, and we try to keep him alive. He laid his head in my lap, and I was begging him and praying, "Please don't die, buddy. Please don't die." He raised his head up, looked me in the face, and he said he loved me. He died. He only weighed 245 pounds. He had lost that much weight from this virus. We took him out back and we buried him. And the only thing that's with him is his 2 pairs of actually it's 4 pairs of metal razors. The other 2 pair of metal razors were for Lucy. They were the punch type. She used them. Only thing, they're buried with the Rascals, those 4 pairs of metal razors and a deflated football and basketball in his collar. I mean, you can go out there for metal detector, you can detect his metal claws still there because they're in a little metal box. Each one's have their own metal box. And they're buried about 15, 20 foot down. And Rascal's buried a little bit deeper because I don't want no one, especially the government, to know we had Rascal. Because if they find out where Rascal came from, see, he came from when Dad first got him. He and his commanding officer, who was his best friend, I guess they were doing experiments with these dogmen. And Rascal's mother, and he said she was real gentle with her handlers. And she had 3 pups. One of them was Rascal. His commanding officer and Dad were both ordered to process Rascal's mother and all the pups. What I mean by process, I mean they were ordered to kill them. I mean, you know how the government does when they do their super soldiers experiments or whatever the hell it was they're doing. Because my father explained that they could always train a dog man because they're so intelligent, but they couldn't train. They could never train a Bigfoot because the Bigfoot has an absolute hatred of people and they're not that intelligent and they were constantly violent. Even to this day, I do wish Rascal was still alive because he was so deep part of my family. When he died, it felt like a part of me died with him. Because all I know, it hurts. It still hurts today.
Now, I have tons of questions for you. But before I get to those, I also wanted to know what happened to Lucy and what happened to the pups, the second letter.
Second letter? She stayed with us for a week. And then she took off with them for the LBL. Because I knew at the time I was sitting at Rascal's grave, I was crying. She went down to me, holding me, hugged me, and looked me across the face, and she said, I have to leave. And that was the last I saw her. and she took the 2 pups in the second litter, and she went off. And this was after my grandfather had passed away, because when he passed away, Rascal and her both just cried long howls. I mean, you can hear them. And Dad says it's her time to go. And she went.
Did you get to raise any of the little pups at all?
No,
Did you get
they
to
they
see
strayed
them?
around a little bit, but they went with her. They went with her.
Did they ever?
I thought that was the best because, you know, the way the army and stuff does and stuff, and Dad's best friend, a commanding officer. See, he would come by from time to time. He would check on us and stuff. He says, "Yeah, it was really best that Lucy took the pups and go, because if they'd found out, even found out about Lucy, we would all be in trouble. That means Dad and his best friend, they'd both be in trouble because Dad was a captain at the time."
Mhm.
And those two probably would have been thrown in jail and court-martialed and everything else down there at Leavenworth.
Did the pups ever come inside the house?
No,
Okay.
that was a real strange thing. They never did.
Now, Robert, I have tons of questions for you. I actually have 4 pages of questions for you. And I know that there's a lot of people out there in the audience that had questions when they first heard your story ever. So I went ahead and I tried to my ability to apply those questions as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start with, how did your hunting dogs get killed?
This happened about 6 months after the beast of the LBL. This was scary as hell, because my dad and them had just installed the spotlights up against the kitchen window and stuff, and we had a dog pen in there. And I had beagles. Well, for a week, we kept hearing these howls, like a wolf howl or something. And I really didn't know. I says, man, that's kind of strange. For my grandfather says, oh shit, that's not a wolf, that's a hybrid. And I didn't understand what he meant at the time. And we always had these coyotes out. I had about 20, 30 coyotes. They were in kind of the backfield one night. This is just before my dogs were killed. And the dogs were standing up on top of the doghouse and stuff. I go, what the hell are them dogs doing? Then I heard one of the largest fights between whatever it was and the coyotes in back of the field, because I could see dust fly up and everything else. I could hear coyotes screaming in pain, like this fight like you've never heard of before. The next morning we went out. I went out there in my back truck. This is what's scary. We went out there to the backfield and to the first cornfield. I saw carnage like I've never seen before in my whole entire life. 20, 30 coyotes were ripped to pieces, literally. So we picked up them coyotes, what was left of them, took them to the burning pile and burned them. Then that night, I was sleeping. I was relaxing in my recliner. I heard the fence to the dog pen crunch down. Then I heard my dog screaming in pain. I grabbed my Mini 14, turned on the light, and there was this bear-like thing. When it popped up, I had one of my dead dogs under its arm. It had a baboon face. I shot this thing twice in the shoulder and it spun it around. It dropped the dog. The only other dog left alive was Peanuts. I took off after this damn thing, like a damn fool. I chased it down to the creek where the two ponds were. This time the creek was dry. And Peanuts took off after me. And Dad had already called the sheriff's department, called Jack. Here come Jack. And Grandpa were kind of like behind me, but I was way in front of them. I got down to the creek and that's where I lost this thing. Until then it stood up. When it stood up, it was no more than 10, 15 feet away from me. I flipped my Mini 14 off safety. I emptied a whole 30-round clip on it. I stitched it from the groin all the way up to the neck. And it flopped over. Now Peanuts was between me and it, snapping and growling at it and barking. Dad, as soon as he got to me, and since Grandpa and Dad got to me, Grandpa and Jack D grabbed me, dragged me out, and Dad grabbed Peanuts. And we took off for the house. And we all got down there into the garage. Now the garage doors were strange because they were 4 to 5 inches thick of pure graphite with gun slits along the door, which means to me, and I never knew why until that night, when I finally realized the problems my family has had with these hybrids and Bigfoot. And then 6 months, 7 months after my dogs died, I was in a real bad depression. And that one day, and that's when Dad brought Rascal home to me, and I don't know why, it just snapped me out of my depression and all that.
Okay. How old was you at that time?
Graduated
In
21 or 22, because this is in 1985. I was born in 1963.
Okay, 1963. All right. Do you know when you received Rascal what he was sick from?
Some sort of virus is what I could tell. And we started pumping him full. At first, I started giving him bottles of water and stuff, and he wasn't taking that very well. So Amanda and Teresa started getting some antibiotics, because, see, we didn't know what sort of medicines we could get for him, because, see, his chest and stuff was kind of like a person, you know, like a marathon runner, but the rest of him wasn't. This is how strange he was looking as a small pup. And so we started giving him regular baby formula and putting every type of antibiotics in it. And he started taking to that, and he started getting stronger. Then he started eating a whole lot better and everything. I mean, he was getting well.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just this is more of a statement. So it's crazy that when you first got him, he was obviously sick. Do you think that maybe he was sick from the whole super soldier program that he was being put through? Or do you think they tried to kill him like they did the rest, but for whatever reason, he didn't die just yet?
That would be my only reason, because I was thinking that too.
Okay. You know, and how ironic it really is that you saved him from the sickness, and then he saved you in the end and died from that sickness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and I was thinking on part of that too. That might have been from that bite, from that rape.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That's
got
where I was really thinking.
and got that parvo or even some type
Yeah.
of, you know.
It was a parvo type virus.
Okay.
That's the only way Amanda and them could describe it, since they were veterinarians in the first place.
Yeah. Which, you know, you hear a lot about dogmen that people encounter that have some type of mange. What if it's a type of parvo that they're actually having, and that's why they're so skinny, or they're dying, or they're weak, you know?
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, it sounds so common, you know. So
Yeah.
what if these creatures, these red creatures, are carrying this from the animals they eat that have parvo or rabies, and then you know, obviously that's what's causing these dogmen, that they're trying to, you know, take out these rakes and other creatures, and they're
Yeah.
causing them to
Yeah.
get this disease.
Mm-hmm.
How big was Rascal when you first got him?
Not very big at all. I would say a little bit bigger than this keyboard.
Oh, okay. Okay. So he did look like a puppy though, right?
Yeah, he was like a puppy. Real skinny. His skin was light charcoal gray. His mane was like a jet black.
Okay.
Real soft.
So was he like a fluffy puppy with his mane?
More like a sleek puppy, but fluffy too. A little bit.
How old do you think he was when you got him?
He was only 3 days old. That's what my dad said.
3 days old. All right. Now, who all lived with you and your family when you had Rascal in the house?
My grandfather, me, my dad, his girlfriend, and her daughter, Teresa.
Why did you name him Rascal?
Because he kind of looked like a rascal.
If you could pick another name for him, did you have any lined up before you picked Rascal?
Not really, no. Because that was the first thing that popped into my head, and it stuck.
Okay. How long was you with your girlfriend when you received Rascal?
2 years.
Years.
Because I met her in college.
What was her I guess opinion or thoughts when she first seen Rascal?
She first thought, she says, "Oh my God, that poor misformed dog." She said, "That poor baby." And my grandfather explained to her, that's the way he's supposed to be. She looked at him, she says, "You have never heard a dog man, have you?" She says she's only heard stories like everybody else. She says, he says, "Well, look." They're real.
What did your father or your grandfather, since I believe he's the one you said that was in the military, what
My
do
both,
they?
both parents were.
Okay,
Both,
both
my
of them.
grandfather was in the Navy. He's served in World War II as an air ops. His carrier was hit by a kamikaze in the Battle of Okinawa. He got the is either the Navy Cross or the Congressional Medal of Honor. My father served 2 terms in Nam. He got the Silver Star and 2 Bronze Stars.
Okay. What now? Since he's probably got all this, knowledge and stuff of these creatures, and kind of taught you about them, what was the name that he had for them?
Well, for the Bigfoot, he just calls them SOBs. Nothing but trouble, murdering, He said the Dogman, he said he calls them the final type of canine that has human intelligence like us.
Okay. I didn't know if maybe that I guess whoever he was under had a classified name for them other than what we call them today as dogman,
Yeah.
and know them as werewolves. Was there some type of?
There was another name for Dogman, and Rascal told me what that name was, and it's called Lyrica.
Oh wow.
It's
Okay.
a Lyrcia.
Lyrica.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
He says that's what their people are truly called, Lyrica. Upright canine. I guess that's kind of like what Lyrica is.
How did you find out? How did you first find out that he could swim and climb?
By the way his arms were shaped. Because see, his arms went all the way down past his knees, as big as he was.
Mm-hmm.
And since his claws were retractable like a cat, well, I'm going to think, well, hell, he could probably climb. And I put it to the test. As a pup, he climbed right on. Just like a cat, he ran up that doggone tree and he ran back down. Looked at me with a big old smile, and I go, okay. Then when I went swimming one time, and because we on part of our property along the Cumberland River, there's this beach, and that's where I like to go off jumping in the river and swimming sometimes. And by George, he would jump in there and swim with me. Because I'd swim like a person. I found out when I looked over, he was swimming like me, and then he dove under me and swam all the way across the river underwater, popped his head up, swam back to me, back under and all the way back.
Wow. How long do you think he can hold his breath for underwater?
He could hold his breath a whole lot longer than we could.
Really?
Because he had real good lung capacity.
Yeah, that would make sense because of how they howl, and how deep it is.
Yeah.
Could you give a guesstimation of how long he could hold his breath for?
Well, we could only hold ours for 9 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say at least his would have to be twice.
Okay. Wow, that's incredible. How old was he when he first understood what you were saying to him?
I'm going to say we found that out in 6 months.
6 months. Okay. So that means that we know that dogmen are pretty intelligent as soon as they're born.
He says, well, it's more than that. My grandfather said they have a soul. He says, reason why he says they got a soul. He says, watch their eyes. Because their eyes, their color will change and all that with their emotions. That means they have a soul. I said, well, what about Bigfoot? I said, Bigfoot's totally different. If they have a soul, then it's a black soul because they're total evil.
Yeah.
Because their eyes are black as coal. Most of them.
Okay. You mentioned that he had a double row of teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be considered similar to what a shark's teeth would look like?
Almost, but
Like in the row wise?
yeah.
Okay.
But the front ones were canine. But as he got older, both sets of those teeth the teeth kind of realigned
Mhm.
and came into one row on the bottom and one row on top.
Okay. So that was more like his baby teeth and
Yeah,
his adult teeth coming in.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Did it look scary with him having 2 rows of teeth? Or did he just look too cute to even really be scary?
Actually, he looked kind of too cute. And I'm like, boy, that's a row of teeth. That's his man. When he gets big enough and those teeth are still there, I says, I do not want to get into it with him.
Let's see. Now, I know that you raised him inside your house. How
Mhm.
high were the ceilings in your house?
10 to 11 foot. That's a good sized house.
Okay. Okay.
It's about 5 bedroom, 3 bath.
You said that his favorite food ever would be vegetables. Did he
Mhm.
ever eat any type of sweets or candy or
The
chocolate?
sweets, oh yes, he would eat fruit. He wouldn't eat
Oh.
like chocolate or anything like. He tried it once and go like, he wrinkled his nose up at it, and I tell him, okay, no chocolate.
What was his favorite fruit?
Oranges and apples. And oh yes, I introduced him to pineapple.
Oh, wow. I
We
bet.
went after that pineapple, me and him both.
Let's see.
He
I-
also drank coffee. As a pup, I made a mistake leaving my coffee cup down because I always have cream and sugar in and stuff. And I was playing my video games. This is a NES, Nintendo, if you ever. And I was sitting back there and I wasn't watching now. He walks over, smells the coffee. See, he saw me drink it. So he gets down there and he drank it. I'm like, uh-oh. This is when he's 7 months old. I'm like, oh Lord, you talk about trying to calm a dog man down after having a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Jesus. Now, when he got older, I noticed he would get headaches like I would. And I'd let him drink coffee and it would calm him down because the caffeine in the coffee, I guess, is kind of like, to them, it's kind of like us. That caffeine kind of stops the headaches.
Okay. Do you think maybe that where he was pretty much combined with, to you through soul telepathically, that you guys shared the same pain and the same feelings?
A lot, yeah.
Okay.
Because a lot of times we get separated while we're hunting. This would scare me because I suffered a severe infrasound attack
Okay.
from a Bigfoot. This is how Bigfoot really hunt. When they're opportunists, they use infrasound to freeze their prey. This is when I was close to the caves. Me and Rascal was behind me. Because what it was, he had to go back and get the other 2 deer. Because we were into like a running hunt with these deer. We already took out 2 elk, which was a really good hunt. We had pulled them back. And I had wounded an 8-point buck, and I was determined to get this damn thing because we'd already gotten 4 deer. I didn't have to go after this thing. I wanted it. Because I've been after this deer for a while. And I went down there. I knew I was close to the caves, but I turned and went the other way. I went up the hill, turned to go the other way. When I got out on top of the hill, I started feeling sick. Then my ears started ringing. Then I hear this like that. And I was going like, oh shit. I said, Rascal, where are you? And I was just thinking it. I guess he was a mile back of me. He come charging out of there. And here's the thing about Dogman that I found out. He could break infrasound with his own infrasound.
Okay.
because he could also speak some words. Because here's the thing, here's what Amanda showed me. Dogmen have a double voice box, a voice box within a voice box, which gives them the ability not only to do these long howls and everything, it also gives them the ability, since they're telepathic, to also speak some words. It's like this, if you're in deep in the woods, you're in a national forest like the LB or something, you're all alone out there and you hear your name whispered or something, 10 times out of 1, it's probably a dog man trying to lead you out of the woods
Okay.
or communicate with you, whatever. So anytime when I was going with this infrasound attack, I fell down to the knees and I dropped my rifle. I looked up about 80 foot away, coming towards me with this Bigfoot coming along on all fours. This thing was huge.
Oh man.
This is like a type 1, type 2 Bigfoot with the kind of like cone head. And he was a kind of like a burnt orange fur or hair on him with a charcoal gray face and reddish eyes. By the time my knees hit the doggone ground and I dropped my rifle, all of a sudden here was Rascal got between me and it, and he let out this, I can't describe this how he gave, but he gave it. It was a high-pitched howl. And that Bigfoot fell back. When he fell back, Rascal literally beat the tar out of it.
Wow.
And it managed to get away from him and go back into the deep woods, probably back to the LBL.
Was this Sasquatch, you think, trying to kill you, eat you, or just try to get you out of its area?
Since it was on our property, it was hunting for an opportunity, and I was the next meal.
Okay.
Because I had that deer with me too, and that deer was just like, you know, an extra prize.
You said that you shared a bed with Rascal. Now, you mentioned you had a king size bed. Did you ever have to buy a bigger bed as he got bigger, or what did you do as he got bigger?
We got a little bit bigger bed.
Okay. Do you ever see him in your dreams, even though he's passed?
Yes.
Where did your father find Rascal when he gave them to you?
At the underground kennels at the base.
Did Rascal ever stink or take showers?
He didn't stink, but he took showers and he took baths.
Okay. Well,
Now he had an earthy smell to him, but just not like, you know, like now these cogways, oh, they smelled, they had a horrible sour smell to them.
really?
Now Bigfoot I'm gonna have to say this were even worse because they smelled like rotted meat.
Okay. Yeah.
And blood.
Mm. What does the type 2 dogman look like compared to?
That was Rascal, because Rascal kind of looked like, you know, the Van Helsing
Oh,
werewolf
yeah.
type deal. That's what
Yeah.
Rascal looked like.
Wow, that's one of the most scariest looking ones.
Mm-hmm.
So he looked just like that big and
Yep.
that. Wow.
And muscular, yeah. 9.5 foot tall.
You kind of answered this question a little bit ago, but what did Rascal smell like when you guys slept together in the same bed and you laid on his mane?
He didn't smell all that bad. Kind of a little bit like a dog, but you know.
Okay. Okay.
Because when we crash out, we crash out.
Did he ever like hold a coffee cup and drink it? And did he ever try
Yep.
to like
Yep.
when he would watch you play video games, would he try to just watch you, or did he try to?
Oh, he just watched the thing. He just infatuated with it.
Was he? Because I
Mhm.
mean, I can imagine he was really, fascinated with you. So anything you were doing,
Mhm.
he probably wanted to
Oh,
do
yeah.
too.
Yeah. Oh, you did.
Did Rascal ever fart or burp?
He farted, and he burped too.
Would it ever was it loud enough since he has that double voice box? Did it sound scary, or what would that be
It
like?
was a little, it kind of burp like that. Like, okay.
Now, before you had all these crazy events happen, why was Rascal so protective with making sure no one slept by the windows before that one?
That was because of that one incident that
Okay.
happened to me, and it was like this. He didn't want no one sleeping near their windows, or even he didn't mind them like sitting at the windows, like at the living room and stuff.
Yeah.
It didn't bother. But when it came to our bedrooms and stuff, he wanted to make sure our beds were way up there against the wall, away from the windows, about 30, 40 feet against the windows, because if anything that were to come out at them, like it came out to me when I was sleeping on that couch,
Mm-hmm.
he'd have what I would call fighting room. And yeah, once that thing, it's like this. Rascal would give these things a warning bark. If they didn't take that warning bark and didn't leave, it was all up from there.
Yeah.
Because he let them know he was the alpha male. This was his home. That 400, 500 acre homestead was his home too. And if you didn't leave, you're in trouble.
Wow. Now, for those who don't know where the LBL is and stuff, where did you and Rascal actually grow up? What state?
Kentucky.
Kentucky. When Rascal would run at 60 miles an hour, did he make any noise? Was he silent?
No, he was silent.
Wow. Okay.
He was dead silent. And before I get to that doggone stop sign, he was on 2 legs. He would jump over the fence, land in the back of the truck, and slide through my back window and enter
Yeah.
the passenger side seat right beside me. Because my truck was big enough you could sit. Was the first F450 with the 3 doors,
Mm-hmm.
the 1980 ones. If you remember what they looked like, mine was huge. I called it Big Red. It was a huge truck, extended cab and all that. And the window, instead of one part opening up, I had it modified where I can open all the way up where Rascal could easily slide in there.
Was he faster on his 2 legs or 4 legs?
Faster on his 4 legs.
Okay.
He looked kind of weird on 4 legs because them 2 front legs weren't legs at all. They were hands and arms.
Yeah. Okay. How could you tell for the very first time that Rascal was very strong? Because you mentioned it when you said that it got to the point where he was too strong to even test his strength. So how did you find that out?
I found that out when I was swimming. This is back at the back of Smithland, where the old rock quarry was, and I was just diving off the side cliffs, into the water. But one time I dove, and some of those rocks got loose, and this huge boulder rolled over on top of me. This damn thing was about 400 or 500 pounds, and it trapped me, and I couldn't get up. And Rascal saw me, I was trapped. He ran over. He grabbed this rock with both his hands, and he lifted straight up over his head and tossed that damn boulder over.
Wow.
Because that was a huge boulder. Because I could only guess its weight, because I dang sure couldn't pick it up by myself.
Man. Do you think that he came into your life to be more of a guardian angel because of all the attempts that could have killed you?
Yep. And it's not just me, it was my whole family. Because these Bigfoot and these other cryptid that were mean as hell, they wanted, I truly felt that they wanted to take over our homestead, because not only did you have the creek that run from river to river, but you had the 2 ponds, you had plenty of fish, you had plenty of game, foliage, water, everything you could have wanted that you could easily survive.
Okay.
Plus we had crops there, plus we had tomato plants and all that, and Rascal loved tomatoes and he loved green beans. It's
I know,
like he just loved vegetables.
I know that you said that you don't have no pictures of Rascal, but do you have any pictures of the retractable metal claws?
No,
No.
I wish I did though, because my dad, my grandfather, and his best friend told me pictures of Rascal would not be a good idea, because if they were to ever get out, there would be definitely questions.
Yeah.
Not by the sheriff's department or anything like that, but we're talking higher up.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you fully on that. Do you have anything left of Rascal? Like maybe a tooth or anything like that?
What I do have, and it's packed away in my storage unit, I'm still thinking I've got a hunting jacket that he liked to wear. It was red and red plaid that he'd wear over himself and wear over me. And I still got that. I'm hoping I still got that.
Would he wear coats and clothing often?
Not really, no. Because he used it, pull it over him, kind of like a blanket type deal to sleep over.
Okay.
He really wouldn't wear clothing. I tried to get him to one time, but he just kind of shake it off. It just wasn't him. So I'm like, okay, that's all right.
How funny would that look though, to to have this giant wolf to be having clothing on, standing by Beetle? That'd be looking.
That would be, yeah, that was kind of funny, but and my grandfather looked at it and said, "No, that's just not him."
How long did you have Rascal before any cryptids or creatures started showing up?
I had him for 3 years.
Okay.
That's when he was real young. Then when they first showed up, that's when one of them poked his arm through the daggum window and tried to grab me.
Okay.
And when it tried to grab me, it's like this. In the back of my mind, after it's all over, I'm like, wait a minute. Rascal's a type 2. Didn't these things, since he was there in the house with us? I don't know if they did or not. And I don't know if it was his infrasound, because sometimes when he'd lay down, he'd use his infrasound. And I noticed that, so I don't know if he uses his, I think he uses his infrasound, especially when he's hunting and stuff. And I know that he did it kind of like a cloak.
Okay. So you said he would do it at nighttime. Would he just do it to, you said as a cloak?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's actually pretty impressive. So what kind of dreams would you and Rascal have together? Since you said that you had this one dream where he actually, told you that, you're his family. What kind of dreams would you guys have together?
It was like a dream state, kind of like a heaven state type dreams, where it was like we'd be like walking along fields and talking, or we would be sitting down talking.
And would it be physical talking or would it be like telepathic mind speak?
Telepathic lines.
Okay.
Now he could speak some words too. He'll say dad. He'll look at me like dad. Look at Amanda like mom. And it's like simple things like that. And this is what I mean when he spoke simple words like that. He say either good or bad. To me, that's intelligence that you're not going to see out of a Bigfoot. I'm sorry, you're not. Some people say Bigfoot are like that. No. When God punished them, he took their speech and reverted them back to animal. Because if you look in the book of Daniel, when Nebuchadnezzar got so into himself and all that, filled with pride and all that, and started bragging, what God did to him turned him in what? Into a beast.
Right. Yeah.
Like a Bigfoot. There's your Bigfoot right there. And they said Bigfoot's not in the Bible. Yes, it is. Look at Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay. Now, with these metal retractable claws, would you be able to draw what these look like? Do like a sketch?
Yeah, I could do that right now.
Okay. Maybe send it to me after this video, and that way I can add it to your episode for others to kind of get an idea of what they look like.
Yeah. Well,
was it always hard? Was it hard to keep Rascal always fed?
No.
Okay.
Everyone said they're voracious eaters. That's only when they're young, but when they're young, they get real selective on their eating.
Okay. Okay. Let's see.
All right. That's not gonna be well. That'll be good enough.
After Rascal's passing, have you seen an apparition or ghost of him?
Only in my dreams.
Only in your dreams. What does he say to you, or what do you guys talk about when you still dream of him?
It tells me not to worry, that we will meet again.
Okay. So is he, I don't know if you believe in reincarnation or not. Do you know if he's going to wait until the day that you pass to see you, or do you know if maybe he's going to come back as a dogman again, or another type of being?
That I wouldn't know.
Okay.
I would say another dogman again, or maybe once I die, I hopefully to see him at the Rainbow Bridge and we stay together, you know.
Yeah. Okay. What was your thoughts as you seen Rascal grow, as he didn't look like a normal dog, or like a normal dog in the very beginning?
At the very beginning, I could tell that he was different from all the other canines.
Yeah.
I knew he was canine, but I knew this was a different type of canine.
Yeah, because before him, you never seen any type of dog or wolf like this creature, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. When Rascal was in the house, was there ever a time where he would be walking bipedal, or even his appearance, that it would scare you?
Not really.
Okay.
Kind of scared Rosie once because she was cooking,
Yeah.
and he walked real silent behind her, and she heard him smelling, and that made her jump because he was making chicken and dumplings.
Oh, did he like that? The chicken and
Oh
dumplings?
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
See, did Rascal teach you anything from his culture of dogman as he got older?
Yep. He taught me how they hunted.
Okay.
Okay, I just took a picture of these claws I had made. Now, if I can find your thing here.
Did he teach you like anything he learned through his astro travels when he would dream?
Yes
Like,
and no, because I
okay.
couldn't explain them.
Maybe like his history of origin.
Yeah, he said they came from the beginning time when our ancestors came from. So I'm taking that from the Bible, from Adam and Eve type deal.
Okay.
Because when I would read the Bible, I would watch his eyes, and as I read, it looked like his eyes would read too.
Huh. You said that you and Rascal would play around. How would you guys go about doing that?
We would kind of wrestle around, kind of the exercise type, because I'd have his feet put up against my feet, and I'd have his hand be right here, and my hand would be right at his elbow, and we would pull back and forth. Exercise.
Was he ever?
Thing of his claws, what they look like.
All right. Was he
That's
ever?
on-
Was he ever
Huh?
ticklish?
Was he ever ticklish? Yep.
Yeah. Was
His feet were ticklish, and they were soft too. Let me tell you. Yeah, his feet on the bottom were real soft.
Did he ever laugh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It kind of like a chuckle laugh.
Okay. So could you like tell a joke and he would laugh from that, or
Oh, he would grin from ear to ear.
what was the funniest thing that made him laugh?
Funniest thing that made him laugh when he chased that guy up the tree.
Okay, so he did laugh and did that. Okay. Because I thought for a minute that he was, he was taking the situation pretty serious because someone broke in. But so when he went up that tree, that's when he actually started to laugh or chuckle. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think would have happened to you if Rascal wasn't there to save you from the Dogman Type 3 when reaching in the window?
I wouldn't be here.
Okay. Was that your first experience with another cryptid at that when that happened?
Actually, that was my second. My
Okay.
first one is when that hybrid killed my dogs.
Okay. Yep, that's
That
right.
was before I got Rascal.
I made a statement out of this because I kind of agree with what you said. With the giants they talked about giants being cannibalists, in the Bible time. So it would only make sense that Bigfoot could be, the Nephilim. So I agree with you. How did your grandfather know so much? Obviously, because he was in the military.
Apart from that, which I'll probably explain in the third book, just on him, because there's so much he's told me. It's like he experienced these things when he was a small child, like 5 or 6 years old.
Okay. So he had his own experiences way back in the day. Okay. So did his parents?
When he was in the Navy, going to training in the Atlantic and stuff, before he switched over to Pearl Harbor, when it got bombed, he noticed that they, at certain radar stations, like in Maine and all that, there wasn't too many guards at these stations, but there were these huge dogs, he said, that were walking the guard perimeters. And they'd have like just one guard there. Didn't matter if it was Navy or Marine. And they would be controlling these large dogs, he said, from a control tower or a control bunker. Now, I did not know that he meant that these large dogs were actually dog men. That's what I'm thinking. That's what it was. Because he said these things were not German Shepherds. And he says they damn sure weren't devil dogs. And I've run into devil dogs too.
Do you think that with the military trying to turn or use and even experiment with these dogmen have maybe did something to where their eyesight is apparently changing? Or do you know if their eyesight's always been like that?
From what I gather, especially from my grandfather, their eyesight's always been like that
Okay.
because they can see farther away. And he said they could also hear for miles and miles.
How many miles, if you could give a guesstimation?
I'm going to give a guesstimation about 50 to 60 miles.
Wow.
And I don't know how. He says this is why Rascal turns his ears so much because he can hear all that.
Yeah. Okay. Have you ever seen Rascal angry when hungry?
No, not really. He just let me know that he's hungry. He says, I'm hungry, let's eat. Of course, I'd fix us something and be that.
Let's see. What was Rascal's birthday?
As close as I can estimate, it's 1985 and it was March. I got him on March the 20th, and he was only 3 days old. I'm going to say to March 17th.
Okay. Okay.
Because it was November the 17th, 2000 is when he passed.
Okay.
If he hadn't have passed, I would say he'd still be alive today.
Now, did Rascal prefer to be on 2 feet or on all fours?
He'd actually prefer to be on 2 feet rather than all fours, but he'd do it on all fours so not to scare anybody. And it's like he couldn't scare little kids. Little kids would come up to him and it's like, wow, you know how a little kid is.
Yeah. Well, now, what's the highest that Rascal could jump?
Close to 35 foot.
Wow. Here's a funny one for you. Did Rascal ever try to use the toilet in the house?
Yeah, and it didn't work. So we took him outside. But yeah, he did try. Come on.
What happened for it not to work?
He missed the commode lid.
Doing a number 1 or a number 2?
Number 1.
Oh.
I didn't want to try number 2, okay?
Yeah. That's funny. Do you think Dogman are faster than Bigfoot?
Yes. And they're better fighters than Bigfoot because of their speed and their strength.
So
Raw strength, I'm sorry to say this, I do tend towards the Dogman in all aspects of the fight because their intelligence.
yeah.
Because they know how to use their strength.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this. Bigfoot goes all out. Bigfoot might be stronger, but look, you got to be smart in a fight too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why do you think that the LBL has so many cryptids and creatures there?
Because it's a haunted, cursed place. Because there's thousands of graveyards there.
Okay.
And plus the Indians, way back when, used it as a battlefield.
It always, makes me wonder, why is it that cemeteries, and mainly Indian cemeteries or mounds and things like that, like what have Indians done? Or, obviously I think all the supernatural is attracted to this higher frequency or vibration or something, or maybe it's lower. But for whatever reason, it's like all these creatures are attracted to that. I wonder if it's because they're more of a physical, lower frequency than humans. And maybe that's why we can't understand it, because they're all going to where death and battle is, and or where the energy of that was.
That's partly it. But we also got to look at it like this. Native Americans were super highly civilized.
Mhm.
If you ever heard of you've heard of the ancient cities of Limera and Atlantis.
I've heard of Atlantis, but not the other stuff.
Okay, well, Limera and Atlantis were two main cities of the Nephilim. And when they became evil, sinful, and everything else, God destroyed them. He destroyed, it's like this, like my grandfather said, God destroyed their language. He destroyed their writings, turned them into beasts, and scattered them to all the four corners of the earth.
Wow.
That was during Noah's flood. And I looked at the Bible, that makes sense.
Yeah. It does. I mean, especially when you have all the facts to kind of back up, all the religious texts. Did the
Well, I
name?
see the religious text more than that. I see the religious text as an actual history.
Mhm. Did the name Jesus ever make Rascal cringe or act weird or anything?
No, he actually perked up.
Okay.
So when he perked up like that, so I'm thinking they got a sense of God
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
many ways.
How many miles do you think that a dogman can run in a small amount of time?
Straight out or just on a full amount of time?
Let's say in 10 minutes, how many miles do you think a dogman can run? How many could Rascal run?
Close to 30. In
Wow.
10 minutes.
30 miles in 10 minutes.
And that was just on two legs.
I can only imagine him going twice as fast on all fours then.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's like this when I fell out of the tree and that one Bigfoot tried to get us.
Mhm.
And I hit my head. He threw me on top of the back, and I knew that truck was at least 40 miles away.
Wow.
And we were in the LBL, and I had the truck parked actually on the side of the second cornfield on our gravel road on our property. And we had walked all the way through the LBL to the Tennessee-Kentucky line, where that real nice picnic area is now.
Did you ever have to clip, or did he ever get his nails clipped?
Actually, no, he got his this is what my grandfather and father would do. They would manicure his nails to a razor sharpness.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. And he would just lay there, stretch all the way across the floor, and they'd all sit down. They'd sit down and carefully manicure his nails. And he would fall asleep while they'd manicure his nails too.
Let's see. This is more of a statement. It only makes sense that if we have an animal in the animal kingdom, such as a cheetah, that goes 60 miles an hour, why not have a cryptid that does the same thing? So Dogman being able to run 60 miles as well an hour, and that's why you probably hear a lot of encounters where people speed up and they're keeping chase with the vehicle.
Mhm. Well, they're like a canine. They like to chase things.
Mm-hmm.
That's in part of their nature. Now it's in part of Rascal's nature too.
See, with the Dogman, the people always encounter them, in the fall. So what was Rascal's routine from October to August?
His routine for October and August was when
Like,
he would patrol our property, he'd go all the way around the edge first. Then he would like crisscross, zigzag all the way through. Start from them caves and come all the way back to the house.
okay. So in the whole entire year, he never hibernated or anything like that. Was he just
No,
okay? Let's see. Do you think if Rascal didn't have those razor claws, he would have been killed by the alpha Bigfoot?
no. See, those razors gave him an edge. They actually made him invincible.
Yeah.
Is actually what it did. And I had one of my friends turn around and said, "My God, as strong as he is, and you all gonna fit him out with that too?" It's like he don't need those as strong as he is. I said, maybe
Yeah.
not, but it's like my grandfather wasn't gonna take no chances
Yeah. Nah,
because the second pair of razors he fitted with Rascal, these were pointed,
mhm.
come to a straight point. The reason being was Jack came to the house. He was white as a ghost. I said, my grandfather said, "Jack, what's wrong?" He says, "Up there on the backside of Carsville, up there by the Ohio River, was at the far edge of the county in real deep woods where even me and Rascal couldn't get into." He said, two little kids were out playing back in the back of the general store. They said this grayish looking SheepSquatch came out of nowhere and screamed at them. And Jack turned and said this SheepSquatch was anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 pounds and over 16 foot tall.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's when my grandfather's going like, "Oh shit." And I heard this and I thought, oh God, can Rascal actually go up against something this huge and big that's even twice the size as him and outweighed him by about 400 or 500 pounds,
Wow.
even more?
That was kind of my next question. And like, how and why did he come up with the idea of these claws? And that's because of the sheep squatch. How did he get the idea of the claws though?
Well, as big as those creatures supposedly be,
Mm-hmm.
and as powerful as they are, and from what I hear, they stink too. For them to be that doggone powerful and stuff, my grandfather, when he made those spike claws, he wanted to give Rascal an edge in case one of them things were to come after us.
Yeah.
But
That's smart.
we never encountered any of them things like that, which I'm thankful.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't think Rascal would be able to take that on. He would give it its shot. I can tell you that much. He probably would have.
And it fit him pretty good.
Huh?
And his claws, the metal claws, fit him pretty good.
Oh, it fit him like a glove.
Nice.
He liked using them too. Because when my grandfather, what he did, he grit out these aluminum plates, real long aluminum plates, and he'd have Rascal extend those metal claws out, and he'd have Rascal slash down on that aluminum, and Rascal would split that aluminum in half.
Wow.
That was part of his strength training too.
That is awesome. You guys turned him into a superhero.
Just about it.
Has the death of these different types of cryptids caused you any type of PTSD?
Some, yeah.
Okay.
But I would think of Rascal and it'd go away pretty much.
Okay. How old was you when you battled the Bigfoot? The very first one.
The very first one?
Yeah.
That was in 1988. I was 23 or 24.
Okay. Now, this one's a good for advice for anybody. How old, or no, sorry. What type of guns or ammo do you believe could kill a Bigfoot and a Dogman? If you had to go against one.
If I had to go against one, I'd have to go with the AR-15 7.62 millimeter.
Here, let me write that down.
Double metal jacketed now, not single, doubled. We're talking the armor piercing round type, because I had armor piercing rounds with my AK-47.
Okay. Piercing.
And that's what they call metal jacketed, which is the same thing as armor piercing. Now I had some incendiary too,
Mm-hmm.
what they call white phosphorus rounds, which my dad and his best friend gave to me. You can't buy these at any store or any sporting goods store.
Where was Rascal injured at when fighting the Bigfoot?
He was injured when he got his at the first pond when we were camping.
And what injuries did he succumb to?
He succumbed when he got his shoulder dislocated.
Okay. So I know you mentioned that he got cut somewhere where he had to get stitched up.
Yeah, that was at the house attack. Because one of them scratched him, and that's the one that ran at him. The one I shot in the leg, it scratched him.
Yeah.
And that's when he like did a backhand with his right hand, and those metal blades just cut its head clean off.
Wow.
I mean, he was that. See, this is another mention of his strength. He was that strong, and those metal blades just made him that much stronger and gave him an edge in a fight.
Did you ever think about keeping a bone or a tooth of one of the Bigfoots that you killed and burned?
No, because we didn't think it was a good idea.
Okay. Let's see. What did Rascal and the two deputies think of Rascal when they first seen him?
When they first saw him as a pup,
Yeah.
they're going like, "Oh, good Lord, he's disformed. What happened to that poor baby?"
And then when he got bigger at his max height, what did they think of him?
Well, one of them asked, they said, "When he has pups, can I have one?"
Yeah. Let's see. Hold on. Let's see. Why do you think the Bigfoot ate their dead ashes and bones?
Well, since they live out there in the wild all the time, they have to have protein all the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you said that you came across this entity called the deer spirit. Can you go a little bit more detail, I guess, of what the body and the face looked like?
Okay, the body was real thin for its size. Almost like it was starving or something.
Okay.
But no, it wasn't. Its deer-like legs were long and extended. And its feet was, the back of it was a hoof,
Mm-hmm.
but the front end was like two toes.
Okay. Okay. How tall was Rascal on all fours?
On all fours,
Yeah.
5'6", up to my shoulder, because I'm 5'10". He was up to my shoulders.
Let's see. Do you think that when that deer spirit disappeared, do you think it disappeared obviously into a portal or a cave or a tunnel underground?
There was no signs of a tunnel or a cave.
Okay.
I'm thinking it went through a portal.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's what I was thinking too. Let's see. What did the fake dogman look like that Rascal ripped out its heart?
This thing had a body of a Bigfoot, like a type 2 Bigfoot. Short, stubby fingers that I do remember, with long fingernails, black. Its face was kind of like a boxer that was stretched out,
Mhm.
and its muzzle was real long and thin. And it had the first 2 ears on the outside were real tall, but there's another pair of ears that were kind of like spark ears that was inside those other 2 ears.
Okay. All right.
And its eyes were blackish red.
Now, that guy that went to go rob your house, did he have a gun or any type of weapon?
He had, what the hell did he have? I was thinking he had a metal pipe or a bat, but I knew when he went nose to nose with Rascal, he dropped it immediately and it went clang on the porch, and he took off running, or tried. Well, he did take off running like a bat out of hell.
Now, you mentioned about this salamander type creature. What kind of creature do you think that was? Was it like a type of reptilian?
Yeah, it was. That's what they call a rake.
Okay. Okay. Let's see.
Now there's another type of deer spirit where people call it a Wendigo,
Mhm.
but I thought a Wendigo was like a pale humanoid type creature.
Yeah.
But I think there's 2 different types of Wendigo.
Yeah, I
One
do
that looks
too.
like a deer spirit.
Yeah,
and,
and maybe it can control the crawlers or something because it's like
Yeah.
they're connected some way or another.
Yeah.
Let's see. Now, this one creature you described, or at least spoke of, can you describe about it where this creature was white and it had this eyeball, I guess, on its chest? Can you describe that a little bit more?
This thing was nothing like I've never seen before.
Mhm.
When it had that eyeball on its chest, when it went up a tree, it had short shoulders. Its skin was completely pale. And it just had that one eyeball in the center of its chest when it went up that tree. It was right across from me and Rascal. It had, I couldn't even tell that it even had a foot. It didn't even look like a foot.
Mhm.
It just looked like a circle like this. And then with a real skinny leg attached to it. But it had no head.
Wow.
No head whatsoever. When its shoulders went up, it's just like this little round hump. Then you had this other shoulder, then you had that eye, bam, right there in the middle of its chest.
Would you be able to sketch this out for me and send it to me later?
Yeah, I can sketch it out now because this,
Because it sounds very interesting. I never heard of any kind of cryptid or creature that looks like that. What do you think that creature was?
to me, I don't know. My grandfather calls it one of the evil force spirits.
Okay. Out of all the creatures that you have mentioned and seen, which one scared you the most?
I'm gonna have to say, apart from that thing that me and Rascal saw with the eye in the middle of its darn thing, would be the top 4 Bigfoot and the Wendigos. I mean, not the Wendigo, but the cogways.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. I only have a few more questions left, and then we will move on to the end of this video. How did Rascal first come across his new girlfriend? How did he meet her?
He told me he met her on the backside of our property towards the LVL.
Okay. Did Lucy, the type 3 dogman, take to you guys very good since she just looked right inside the window seal?
Yeah, eventually she did.
Okay. It's funny because was it your father or your grandfather that noticed her and said, well, who's this cutie?
That was my grandfather.
Your grandfather? So he wasn't even scared when the random dog man was just, hanging inside the windowsill looking.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. Why do you think Lucy, the dog man, took so greatly to Teresa so much?
I'm thinking it's the mental connection between them, like
Okay.
me and telepathic connection between them, like me and Rascal.
Okay. Well, what was the unique thing about Lucy, with her or her abilities? Like, what made her more special?
What made her more special was that when she cloaked, she used the whole area around her.
Mhm.
Rascals was just more like refined, right there.
Yeah. Okay. What made you decide, or what made your grandfather decide to make Lucy a pair of those metal blades as well?
He wanted to make her, I guess, as powerful as him,
That's awesome.
just as strong as him. It's better to have 2 strong dog men than one.
Oh yeah.
I think that's what made sense.
What did she think about them when she started wearing them?
For her, it was okay, but she didn't wear them very much because I don't think she liked them on her hands.
Not being used to them or anything. She's
Yeah.
without, with just being natural. Yeah, I could see her probably not
Yeah.
wanting to wear them. What was this creature that you were speaking about that was silver haired, black face, and red eyes?
That was one of those Bigfoot.
Okay.
And I'm thinking it was a type 5 Bigfoot that everyone had spoken about.
Oh, wow. Do you think that Rascal could have lost a battle with one of the creatures if he didn't have those metal fists and claws?
No, not as strong as he was, and not as quick and as fast as he was.
Let's see, you already answered that. Who was stronger out of Lucy and Rascal?
When it came out straight out, Rascal. But then when it came to being really super sneaky and all that, I'd have to give it to Lucy. Because she was small and in many ways, she was a whole lot quicker. And since her being a type 3 hyena type, see, the hyena types are always known to be highly vicious.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for her to be sweet and stuff, that's kind of cool, actually. That's probably what makes her
Yeah.
the alpha for her,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep. Well, she was female too, and see, and here's the thing: she was highly protective of everything, and I do mean highly protective, being female,
Yeah.
which I take to account of. Yeah.
So what does a what does a hyena dogman and a type 2 dogman pup look like?
That would be kind of like a type 4 dog man, what everyone would call a type 4 dog man,
Okay.
because sometimes they wound up pretty short with a thin body, but they're just as muscular. They'll be about 5 foot,
Okay.
but their fur is usually light brown or sorry, silver or gray.
Well, I know it's getting pretty late. It's 1 a.m. here and
No,
it's about 12 a.m. there.
sneezed. That's what it was. Yeah, I'm kind of like a night person anyhow.
Let's see. What did Lucy and Rascal's voice sound like when they would talk? Like with the pitch.
Like a sing-song pitch. And they talk to each other.
Okay. Okay.
It wasn't no samurai talk like these dang Bigfoot, because me and Rascal would hear them. And I'd see his eyes slowly go red, and I'd see his claws come out. And I can see his demeanor and said, yeah, you come any closer, you've had it.
Yeah. Could he understand what they were saying?
I'm thinking in many ways, yeah, you could.
Okay.
Because when he laid his ears back, yeah, there was going to be a fight.
I think he could telepathically see what they were, what they had intention.
Yeah, he could.
Okay.
That's why he always told me they were evil. Stay away.
That's right. Yeah. And most of all the creatures he fought and killed all of them. So I'm assuming they probably was all evil too,
Yeah.
How many Bigfoot do you think that you had burned altogether?
I would say probably 8.
8. Okay.
Maybe more.
Let's see. How many cryptids have you seen throughout your entire life now?
6, 7 types.
Wow.
And some I don't ever want to see again.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I've even seen these what's called little people. They look like walking mushrooms. Something out of a cartoon, but no, this ain't no cartoon.
Yeah. Wow. When did you?
Because this was in the LBL, close to Kentucky Dam, and Rascal was with me at the time. This was in, what was that? Was it 1999 or 1998? It might have been 1997, because we were at the picnic area. All of us were camping there. We were just having a picnic at the same time. And something at the corner of my eye, and Rascal whipped around and looked. This thing wasn't making any noise. It's like this. It came out of the bushes, walking. And Teresa says, look, a walking mushroom. And Lucy's ears just perked up and her eyes got wide and she was looking. Then she started growling. And the thing didn't pay anybody no mind. It just walked around in bushes. And then he walked down the creek. Well, Rascal took off after it. So did Lucy. And me and Teresa, we took off after both of them. We got down at the bottom of the creek and the thing was gone.
Wow. That's incredible. Holy crap.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Holy crap.
What other creature or cryptid have you seen that you didn't mention in your story?
That's about the only ones.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. How many years did Rascal live for?
15.
15. And how many years can a dogman live for?
My grandfather said anywhere and I'm taking his word for it, anywhere from 40 to 50 years.
Okay, 40 to 50 years. That's amazing. Let's see. Was Lucy devastated when Rascal died?
Yep. We were all devastated because I wouldn't even work. I wouldn't even eat for 2-3 days, and she didn't either. But she stayed butted up against me for some reason.
Oh. Did Rascal ever learn of what happened to his mother and siblings?
No.
When you buried Rascal, why did Lucy's gloves get buried too?
I'm thinking the reason why those claws get buried too, because at first they was originally for Rascal in case that SheepSquatch came around.
Yeah.
But when we found out it wasn't, that was just, I guess, a chance meeting or something. It must have been traveling, following the rivers or something,
Yeah.
migrating.
Okay.
But I'm glad we never met up with that thing.
No.
Boy, am I glad.
What year did Rascal die?
He died on November 17th, year 2000.
2000. Have you seen any dogmen since then?
Recently, a few. When I go to pay my insurance on my van, I'll travel through the homestead and I'll see a glance of them and stuff. I thought I saw a glance of Lucy 2 weeks ago.
Huh.
Made me feel good.
Yeah.
This was a female and she was definitely old and very, very gray. So
Yeah.
my thoughts were, hopefully that's her.
Did she glance at you or anything?
No, because this female had its back turned towards me.
Okay. Do you think the dogmen that you were seeing were the pups of Lucy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Because I got my cousins and stuff, they live at my mom and dad's house. And what they've told me since Rascal died, and they've built a huge fence all the way around the house. This fence is anywhere from 35 to 40 foot high.
Holy crap.
Yeah, and that's where Rascal's grave is at too, and they put a fence around it. And he says, Robert, since Rascal's gone, he said those things are back, and they brought friends with them.
Wow.
I said, what friends? And they said the one they couldn't describe. He said one of them looked like it had feathers. I said, feathers? They said, yeah, kind of like a harpy.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What?
Uh-huh. I said, and where did this come from? They said they don't know. They said, and my cousin told me, he says, I don't know. He says, but little Jeffrey saw it. And it scared the hell out of him. He said, because he's over playing by Rascal's grave and stuff. And turn around and he said this thing was poking around from behind the tree looking at it.
Wow. And is that the only thing they reported to you?
Yeah, that's the only thing they told me.
Wow, man. That is so incredible. Dang, man. Well, Robert, I mean, you answered all my questions, buddy. And I appreciate you very much for coming on and telling your story and staying up this late to be able to tell it too and answer all my questions. Before we
I sent them 2 pictures for you, so.
All right, I'll definitely put them onto your episode so that way people can get an idea of what it looks like.
Yeah.
Before we end this episode, would you like to give the closing comments or an advice for anybody who could be experiencing any of these kind of entities?
the closing comments I have when you meet these entities, the best thing I can tell you is have a crucifix around your neck. Because if you speak the Lord's Prayer, especially with Jesus, these things will leave. Number two, I'm going to say have some Epsom salt. Well, you may not have Epsom salt, at least have a small thing of holy water with you. And if you do come up, if any of the people here on here that do encounter a dog man, and keep that dog man from ever harming your property or anything, go to the edge of your property with a white marble. That's a sign of peace and friendship to a dog man. Now, for a blue marble is asking for their protection. And a green marble is to let them know that you're having problems with other cryptids, especially Bigfoot, and they will get rid of them.
Okay. All right. And Robert, you're writing a book. So
Yeah.
say if someone wants to get a hold of you and they want to interview you, or maybe when you finish your book and they want to buy it from you, how can they get a hold of you?
Through my email address.
Okay. And what's your email?
It's a robert.sharp12@yahoo.com.
Okay. All right. So you guys have heard that. Robert, thank you so much for coming on again. I appreciate you very, very much. Definitely keep me updated on anything that happens, in your life. I would love to bring you back on. Thank you guys for watching. It's been another episode of Real Supernatural Encounters. I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening, and I'll see you later. See you later, Robert.
All right. See you later, man.